Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 22nd of June. Today, a politician of the people, Sir Keir Starmer, tells GB News he wouldn't use private health care even if his children were ill.
Elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
It's a problem that just won't go away. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak refuses to say whether a cabinet minister is involved in the Tory gambling scandal, as 4 figures now face investigation.
A step too far? Well, that's what some are saying after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
The search for missing teenager Jay Slater enters now its 6th day in Tenerife, as British police say Spanish officers have refused their help.
Good morning. Don't mention the VAR. English players have failed to impress on the pitch, and now our officials are at the centre of a refereeing controversy that denied Holland a victory over France last night. Gareth Southgate, meanwhile, says his players aren't fit enough, and Andy Murray will undergo back surgery today as he enters a race against time to be fit for Wimbledon. More later.
It's a bit of a dull start for some of us this morning, but generally a fine summer's day today, and many of us will have some sunshine on Sunday as well. And it's warming up. Join me later for a full forecast.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, you know, it feels like the country is falling apart.
It does rather, yes.
Nothing works, nothing is happening. I mean, to be fair, trying to be non-political, that is how it is at the minute. Well, things have just got worse, considerably worse.
Go on.
Because some fella called Michael Fosker from Tooting in London went to the supermarket, bought a packet of jammy Dodgers.
And?
No jam.
Oh, no. Ooh.
No jam. In the entire packet of jammy Dodgers, no jam. He said, I was really looking forward to enjoying a classic jammy Dodger.
A Dodger on its own would be a bit dry, wouldn't it?
I've enjoyed it as a sweet treat since I was a kid, but it seems my biscuit decided to play hide and seek with the jam.
It must have been, a Friday afternoon packet of jammy Dodgers in the factory, mustn't it? They ran out of jam.
Oh,
it
honestly.
went on printing.
Foxes. Anyway, Foxes have apologised.
Foxes?
And said they're going to send...
I'll bet you'll be inundated with jammy Dodgers from now on.
Yeah, well, good on you.
Lovely, yeah, why not?
But there you go, just when things couldn't get any worse.
I know. And here we are, look, in our...
Westminster studio.
It's in a Westminster studio because they're doing things, hopefully. They'll probably be knocking it down at the moment as we speak. This weekend, they're giving us a new set, or at least some parts of a new set in our old studios. We'll be back there, hopefully next weekend, but for the moment we're in Westminster.
Well, that's the secret out the bag then, Anne.
Was I not meant to say that? I didn't say that, didn't I? Really? Nobody said keep it secret.
Anyway, that's a launch ruined on Monday morning, but never mind. Never mind. Anyway, let's talk politics, because yesterday our political editor, Christopher Hope, sat down with a man who hopes to be Prime Minister in just a couple of weeks, leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer.
Yes, Sir Keir was answering the questions that you sent in. So please do keep them coming, because this is the first of many interviews to come with party leaders. Now, in this exclusive, he refused 4 times to say that he would pay for private health care for his children, even if they badly needed treatment and were stuck on an NHS waiting list.
Meanwhile, Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, has taken part in an interview with the BBC. He suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO.
Well, let's take a look back at the last 24 hours in politics.
I pay for private healthcare to effectively jump the waiting list.
Yes.
I wouldn't. The idea of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is responsible for bringing waiting lists down, then saying to the public, but so far as I'm concerned, I'm going to jump the list.
But you can afford to. Most people on a good wage do afford it and pay for it.
If I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
This is a man
who tried to overturn the result of the Brexit referendum, who twice urged everyone to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and who ran on a series of pledges to be Labour leader that he cynically then abandoned. My friends, because he has such a past, he doesn't deserve to decide your future.
If people know the outcome of something and they bet on it, I think that's immoral.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But
we've done
we
as an
provoked
excuse.
the invasion of
yes,
Ukraine.
And very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansion.
Well, let's talk to political commentator John Oxley, who's here with us this morning. Good to see you, John. Can we talk about Farage first and foremost? Is he just a man proffering a view that some do hold, or is this one of those moments he's going to look back on and through gritted teeth?
It is a view that some people hold, but it is also very much one of the lines that the Russians want us to believe. And the reality of NATO expansion is these countries that join NATO were desperate to do so, and we've seen that recently again with Finland and Sweden, because of the fear of Russian expansion. So I think it's wrong, and I think particularly when you look at how popular support for Ukraine has been in this country, I think it's a very foolish thing for Nigel Farage to be saying, and I think it could become a bit of a difference point between him and the Conservatives as they fight the final few weeks of this election.
Yeah, I mean, even though a lot of people might think it's a reasonable point of view, and we often get that coming from our audience, actually, the problem is you get hoist by these things, don't you? It's a bit like Keir Starmer being asked time and again whether he would have private healthcare in any circumstance for his family. Sometimes you just you have to live for the rest of the campaign with a question that now it sort of just is almost going to shoot you down every time.
Yes, absolutely. These things take in a life of their own, and what you might think reasonable, other people have a different spin on. But I think these comments in particular, when we get past the election and there's a bit more of a squabble about what influence Nigel Farage and Reform have on the Conservative Party after the election, these sort of questions about where they stand on national security, and we've seen a lot of Tory ministers sort of really calling Farage out on this, could become a real thing that they pick up on.
I mean, he's been struck. It's Ben Wallace, former Defence Secretary, who said he's more Chamberlain than Churchill. Now, that actually is quite a stinging comment.
Yes, it absolutely is. But it speaks to this idea that, is the answer to Russian aggression appeasement and giving them what they want, or is it standing up to them? And, certainly the Conservative Party have really believed in standing up to them, and we've seen that through the support through Ukraine, and before that, things like the Salisbury poisoning as well. This is not just a distant thing. It's something that, if the West provoked the attack on Ukraine, did the West also provoke, British citizens being attacked on English soil?
But it helps, doesn't it? It helps the whole conversation to try and understand your opponent, your enemy.
Yes, that's true. And there's nothing wrong in trying to understand what is going on inside Russian heads. But I think one of the things that you have to be clear when you're saying this is the Putin interpretation of what happened with NATO is very informed by their worldview, and it completely ignores that following the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, you had all these nations newly emerging, newly free, and what did they want? They wanted to be like the West, and they wanted the security of joining up with the West. And surely we believe that is a good thing, and we should encourage it.
Can we talk about Starmer? Is he being... what's his strategy now? I mean, talking to our political editor, Christopher Hope, and sticking to that line, under no circumstances would I pay for private healthcare, even if my children were seriously ill. I mean, it's frankly ridiculous in that anyone would scrabble about for whatever pennies they possibly could if that was the only option that they had for urgent care. But he's being quite robotic on it. Is that because he doesn't want to freestyle, if you like, because that risks falling into a bigger trap?
I think it's partly that. I think, you bring out these lines, but also you can only assume what political parties do in the background is they test these lines, they use them on focus groups. So I imagine there's probably a lot of advice going to him that actually, this is quite a good line. People on the right might attack him, but for a lot of people, the sort of people he's trying to appeal to, many people who could probably never even dream of affording private healthcare should they need it, then this probably tests quite well with them, this idea that you support the NHS and you wouldn't jump the queue.
But he is sort of self-confessedly showing that he's politically expedient, because when he's asked about why he was such an ardent supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, he's more or less said because that was the right thing to say at the time.
Yes.
Not what he believed.
No. But one of the interesting things about this, I was looking at some stuff from a focus group again, and actually that seems to be landing with people. And there's this sense that, well, that's your job, you get on with it. And, we've all been in the position of covering for a boss we didn't necessarily like or was doing the right thing. But obviously, it does make him look a bit, as you say, politically expedient. But the thing is, when you're doing well and when people like you, they don't hold things against you. And, the Tories are in the sort of converse problem that when people really dislike you, everything you do that's bad gets amplified and gets the worst take on it.
I mean, it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, there is an understanding, and you can see it when politicians, people do toe the party line and all that sort of thing. The difference is Rachel Reeves, who obviously is crucial to their campaign, she stepped down. She didn't serve in a Corbyn cabinet, did she? She sort of removed herself from that and has come back once he's gone, which seemed to be, that's a point of principle, isn't it? That's something which some people could look at and applaud.
Yes, and I think that's true. And, there are plenty of political people who really damage their own careers. Keir Starmer has not chosen to do that under Corbyn, and it looks like it's paying off for him. But, it does raise interesting questions. And, you were talking about, Ukraine in relation to Nigel Farage. There's a question there. Jeremy Corbyn has said many similar things. And had Labour been in government in 2022 when the full-scale invasion happened, what would Keir Starmer have done then if Jeremy Corbyn didn't believe in giving military aid, for example?
Yeah, every one of the leaders at the moment has got a problem with the next 2 weeks of interrogation from journalists and from members of the public. They've all got an Achilles heel, really, haven't they? And sometimes several.
Absolutely. And, the other thing about this period of the campaign is when things get really intense, everyone's tired, they've been doing this for 4 weeks already. It's the point where you do start to slip up, you've got more chance of those unguarded moments. And with just 2 weeks left, they can actually have a really outsized impact because the last group of people who are getting to make their minds up are thinking about this. There's still a good chunk of voters that have not decided which way they're going to go. So making a mistake in these last 2 weeks can make a huge difference.
Which is why there can be potentially an element of sympathy for the Prime Minister. I mean, apart from his own massive cock-up off of D-Day, everything that's now happening around him actually isn't his fault necessarily, but it's landing the party in a whole load of trouble.
That's absolutely true. But on the other hand, and we saw this quite a lot with the Partygate scandal as well, if you're the person at the top, you're there, you're meant to be setting the culture, you're meant to be making sure the rules are followed, you're meant to be keeping a grip on things. Yeah. And so if you're in a circle, particularly with the betting thing, if this is his inner circle, if he's not got control of that, then I'm not sure how much he can really wash his hands of it, because ultimately, if you're the sort of person that gives the no messing about here, don't embarrass us like this from day one, these things tend not to happen. It's his team.
It's like Partygate all over again, really, isn't it? It's the fact that it looks as though the leader doesn't have very good control over people who are just running amok now.
Yeah, and it's absolutely that if you're not sort of setting the standards and people aren't whipped in by you, then can you really run a country?
OK.
John, it's like
thank you very much indeed.
Tory battle bus at the moment. Have you seen the picture in The Guardian? In The Guardian, I can... Oh, here we are. It's a picture from the Tory battle bus.
Well, they all look very happy.
And, and guess who's with them? It's our very own Catherine Forster. Hang on a minute, where's the picture? There we go. I don't know if you can see it well enough. They're all very happy in that particular picture. And there on the right of the picture is Catherine Forster.
Looking delighted as well.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised...
I'm surprised it's in The Guardian, were you going to say?
Well, no. I'm not surprised. No, I'm surprised Catherine looks happy because I know she is absolutely exhausted
Yes.
at the moment.
It is a relentless campaign.
She's
there,
perhaps
isn't it?
just delirious.
Yes.
She, as are all of our political team, going from pillar to post and trying to cover every
They
little
really
thing.
are, yeah. 1 minute in the programme, they're up north on the battle bus, and you can see them careering down the motorway. And the next minute, they're doing a piece to camera, as we call it, outside the Houses of Parliament. And you think, how did they get there so fast? It must be relentless at the moment.
Very hard work. Right, let's move on, should we, to the search for missing British teenager Jay Slater. It's now in its 6th day in Tenerife.
Yes, police on the island say their search will now focus on a rural village and valley after the 19-year-old went missing on his first holiday ever without his parents.
Let's talk to a former police officer, Oliver Lawrence, who joins us now. I mean, Oliver, where do they even go at this point to continue this search? Because I hate to say it, but it's really not looking good at the moment, 6 days in.
Yeah, good morning, Steve. Good morning, Anne. You know, any search and rescue operation which enters a lengthy period of time, as you say, we're into day 6. There are obviously greater concerns held for the welfare of Mr. Slater, who's been missing since early Monday morning when he messaged a friend to advise that he only had 1% of battery, was lost in the mountains, which is an incredibly vast area, and needed water. So we know the circumstances under which he went missing weren't brilliant at all in terms of him needing water, and was probably getting tired and disorientated and got lost. So this is a vast area that local police are searching. There has been some early criticism of their communication with the family and the efforts they're putting into certain areas. And obviously we know, as of in the last 24, 48 hours, Lancashire Police have reached out to local authorities to provide some level of assistance. That assistance has been turned down at the moment, and the search continues. But as this goes on, obviously the concerns begin to grow as to the welfare of Mr. Slater.
I mean, is there any implied criticism then of the police on Tenerife, or do they just feel justified in saying, no, look, we've got everybody on it and we're coping?
I think every police service deserves the right to assess a situation in their own right. They believe they've got the resources to carry out this search and rescue operation. It is an incredibly vast area which needs to ultimately be grid searched very painstakingly during daylight hours, because after night you're going to miss things. Obviously, they're using helicopters and dogs and resources that we've seen been used in other search and rescue operations in the last few weeks overseas with other cases. But these are very protracted investigations. Obviously, what doesn't help is the size and scale of the area. An 11-hour walk Mr. Slater was looking at, and to get disorientated in such a complex area means the task is even greatly difficult for police to try and identify where he is, with so many areas where he could be, potentially sitting there waiting for support.
Is now the right time to be looking at what on earth he was doing there, or does that need to be left for now until something is discovered?
So I think there'll be 2 phases to this, Stephen. There will certainly be an investigation going on in the background in trying to identify what was he doing leading up to his disappearance, the people that he was with. Obviously, 2 British expats who've travelled back to the UK were interviewed by local authorities. So obviously the story and the picture of developing of him being at this event over the weekend, that story has been developed. And obviously at the moment, the hypothesis that the police appear to be working with is that he's trying to obviously navigate his way back home and has got disorientated en route. But obviously, you know, the police will be keeping all their options open. But at this stage, I think it's a search and rescue operation. Hopefully, Mr. Slater is found alive and well. But as you say, Stephen, as the days go on, one has to consider whether this becomes a recovery operation.
Unless something happened. I mean, where he was last seen, or one of the last sightings, was where he was meeting up with 2 other, I think, British men. We don't know what happened consequently after that, do we? So, I mean, there still could be a chance that he's alive somewhere.
Yeah, very much so. You know, there's been some incredible stories over the years of people's resilience being out in the open air in the evening. It does cool down during the nighttime, but that can provide challenges if you're not hydrated. But he is a fit and young, healthy young man, obviously an apprentice bricklayer. So he's going to be fit and healthy, but still there's some challenges out in the environment. So, you know, his parents and his mother has pulled away from helping with the search. She's obviously incredibly concerned herself and terrified, and our thoughts are with her at this moment, because it will be a very, very difficult time for their family to navigate. But hopefully in the coming hours and days, the police will be able to provide us more information and find Mr. Slater alive and well.
Well, let's hope so. Oliver, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things absolutely haunting the family, and it's, of course, it's occurred to us all, is what happened to Michael Mosley, isn't it?
Well, of course.
It's so terrible to hear this happening again. But apparently, people go missing often, particularly in these sort of circumstances, when they're in an area they don't know, and something, because they're in an unknown terrain and maybe an unknown sort of climate, they come to some sort of grief because they just can't cope with unknown circumstances.
Plus, in that area, it's similar sort of terrain to where Michael Mosley was,
much
but
bigger area.
But lots of sort of ravines and things, which obviously are hugely problematic as far as the search goes. But nevertheless, let's try and stay positive on that one. It's 6:20. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Well, 2 women have been charged with criminal damage after Just Stop Oil activists sprayed orange paint on private jets at Stansted Airport on Thursday. They're Jennifer Kowalski, who's 28, and Cole MacDonald, who's 22, and they're alleged to have caused over £5,000 worth of damage. The pair are due to appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court later today.
After months of speculation, it seems King Charles and the Queen are going to confirm an official visit to Australia and Samoa later this year. Reports say the original plan was also to visit New Zealand, but the trip has been scaled back as the King continues his cancer treatment.
And Taylor Swift has kicked off the London leg on her Eras tour with the first of 3 sold-out shows at Wembley. Fans descended on the capital in their masses, with attendees including everyone from Sir Keir Starmer to the Prince of Wales and his 3 young children. Tonight, another 90,000 fans will make that same journey to celebrate the Princess of Pop.
It's a day worth celebrating for Dame Esther Rantzen. She's 84 today, a day she says she never thought she'd reach. She was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer last year and has since campaigned to legalise assisted dying. Sir Keir Starmer has personally promised Dame Esther a vote on assisted dying if he wins the election on July the 4th.
Happy birthday, Esther.
Yeah. She seems a very nice lady on the times I've interviewed her.
Wonderful, wonderful, yeah. My absolute hero, Esther is, yeah.
There you go. Now, a few months ago, we reported on the fundraising campaign for the Shot at Dawn Memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire.
2 months on, and thanks to many donations from you, the GB News viewers, it's now been reopened to the public.
Well, our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, went to see the result for himself.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. Back in April, the National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years. With work taking place over the past few months, yesterday marked the official reopening with a service at the site attended by members of the public. Philippa Rawlinson is director of the National Memorial Arboretum.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people. Over 900 individuals have donated. We've been able to not only replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War, but also look at drainage and landscaping and access and interpretation for the site. So we've been able to do a full-scale restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. It was designed and sculpted by Andy de Comyn. He describes the restoration.
So the sculpture itself, I mean, you can see it's looking a lot brighter than the last time you saw it. So first of all, a really good clean, and then this coating is it's a mixture of lime and polymers. Also, there's a waterproof coating over the top of that. So first of all, it brightens it up, but then also it's going to keep it looking nice for a long time. Keep the rain out, and this will be like a periodic thing that we'll do from time to time.
In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold.
Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, you know, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him and remember him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The restoration of this memorial is now complete and its future secured so that the sacrifice of these men will never be forgotten. Jack Carson, GB News, Staffordshire.
It's a disgrace what happened.
Breaks your heart, doesn't
Absolutely disgrace. When you look at those, I know with Harry Farr, age unknown, but a lot of them 19, 20.
Just kids.
Kids being shot because they, didn't want to be there or were already shell-shocked or whatever it
I must say,
be.
I never really knew the derivation of the phrase, so-and-so should be shot at dawn. But that is it, and it's hideous.
Awful.
Absolutely hideous, isn't it?
So quite right, and thank you to all of you who donated to that.
I think that's a lovely
really
memorial
important.
as well.
I think we should all, I think everyone should go to the
I didn't know they were buried
memorial.
without a marked grave either. Isn't that terrible?
Whole thing's dreadful. Right, OK, let's see if we can cheer ourselves up a little bit this morning, because it should be a pretty nice weekend, fingers crossed. Let's get the details with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just one or two pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England. But for most, it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of one or two showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to win over £16,000 worth of prizes. We caught up with a previous winner, John from North Yorkshire, who got his 20 grand prize from us this week. Here's what he had to say about it.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British Giveaway. Well, there I was, sitting in the garden with a cup of coffee, and then I got this phone call out of the blue, and I thought, what's this about? And then it all became apparent. I have to say, I kept thinking several times a day, wow, I've got £20,000 coming. That's fantastic. And then, of course, when it arrived, I do have something to spend it on. I've never actually won anything like this before, but of course, if you're not in, you can't win. But it didn't cost much to enter, and here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
I bet you are, John. Well done. Nice. Spend well. Anyway, you could be our next big giveaway winner. We've got £15,000 in cash and a whole host of goodies to win. Here's how.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Do stay with us. Still to come, Aidan McGee will be here, joining us for all the latest sport. That's next. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
History lecturers at the University of Liverpool have been advised to problematise whiteness and heterosexuality in their seminars. They are saying that you should be guilty if you're white and heterosexual. Not using the long words they use, but that's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, but do you know what? History in this country is concerned with more and has been lived by more white people and more heterosexuals, right? And that's the history. I'll tell you something else, Dawn. This is Russell Group University material here. This is Liverpool. It's a really good university. Mm-hmm. The thing that really got me going apart from this, and I thought it was an AI generation of words input into a system to come up with from something. It's ridiculous. The main issue I have is the verb problematise. I've never heard of that before. Yeah. So they should be prioritising grammar. Let's get first principles back in there firstly.
It's just promoting anti-racism.
It's not, Amy.
It is. Wait. It's just bringing the marginalised voices into the discussion. So
no, what they're saying is look at British history through the optic of
all perspectives. So let's look at it from the perspective of a queer person growing up. Let's look at it from the perspective of somebody from...
But that's not the majority.
When I actually looked at the evidence, it's all about unpacking bias. And you have to admit there has been a white bias in history.
No, there hasn't, because the facts...
From a white perspective...
Amy, the facts are, in history, most people in this country are white and heterosexual.
Of course, but then there's still...
So that's the history.
...voices that deserve to be brought into the discussion as much as the dominant...
Look,
like, that's all decolonising the curriculum is hearing all sides of the argument. Surely we at GB News love. We celebrate that. That's what we do.
We do, but we're not telling anybody it's bad to be white or it's bad to be...
Exactly.
That is not what...
Amy, it is.
About.
It is.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Be an election party, all right.
It will
There are
be.
going to be some moments in this election, I think.
Oh, some big scalps.
It's going to be worth staying up all night, which you're doing anyway, I think, aren't you?
Yeah. It's going to be great. It's going to be absolutely great. Anyway, look, let's crack on with the sport. Aidan McGee is here. Morning.
Good morning to you both.
I mean, look, what would sport be without some VAR controversy?
Well, yeah, you know what? It's actually worked pretty well throughout this tournament. Lots of people have been saying. In fact, someone said to me the other day, they said, hasn't the VAR functioned well throughout the Euros? You know, what is it doing wrong?
There hasn't been any mention of it, really.
No, not really. And then last night we have Anthony Taylor, the English official, and Stuart Atwell in the box, and they take 6 minutes to arrive at a decision on a goal.
No.
So all the problems we're used to seeing in the Premier League were transferred over to the Euros and people weren't happy. So what happened was that it was a pretty dull game anyway. I mean, it was France versus Holland. It was meant to be one of the real key matches of this tournament. Friday night, 8 o'clock. Everyone was looking forward to it. Having had watched a couple of games earlier on, that was the real, the main attraction. And so they weren't helped by that, because if it had been 2 or 3 goals in it, we wouldn't be talking about the VAR as much. But Holland thought they'd won the game. And a shot by Xavi Simons went towards the goal. The goalkeeper, it's difficult to explain it without being able to see it, but we can see pictures now on our screen for the benefit of our radio listeners. But the goalkeeper, Mannion, just couldn't get to the ball because he claimed that the reason he couldn't dive is because a player was standing in, Holland player Denzel Dumfries was standing in an offside position.
But he was offside. I mean, even the Netherlands.
He was offside, but I don't agree that he was preventing the goalkeeper from diving. So the fact is, Stephen, if you're taking 5 or 6 minutes to arrive at these decisions, there's probably nothing wrong with the goal. That's the orthodoxy. Unsurprisingly, Didier Deschamps, the French manager, said, I thought it was right. It was a no-brainer. It was absolutely the correct decision. And Ronald Koeman, the Holland coach, was furious and said, no, how do we arrive at this situation? But nonetheless, it was England's or the Premier League's VAR officials not necessarily covering themselves in glory with that one. So we hope their performance improves later on.
How does that play out in terms of their positions because it was it was first 0-0 draw of the tournament, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But is it going to affect where they stand?
No, not really. I don't think. I expect both teams to go through. They're both on 4 points now, so they'll play their final games next week. They'll kick off concurrently with the other teams in their group, and I would imagine they wouldn't have too many more problems. I mean, England are on 4 points as well, and so that normally puts you in a decent position after 2 matches. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, you know, I think there is a scenario they could see either side eliminated. They're not home and hosed, so yeah, it could prove decisive. Absolutely, good point. You're well up on your football today.
Hey, I'm up on my football. Meanwhile, after England's dismal performance,
Was it that bad?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'd say it was pretty bad. Yeah,
In fact, my reaction at home, I didn't watch the match, but my reaction is, hey, we've come out top of the group. And, we weren't defeated.
No, but
why is everybody groaning?
Well, because expectations are so high. There's nothing new with English football or the England team in that regard. But Gareth Southgate is claiming that the reason they're starting games quickly and not being able to and dropping off quite quickly is because they're not fit enough. He's saying that the rigours of a Premier League season mean that the players are playing upwards of 50, 60 matches, and it comes to a tournament like this where it's very demanding. You're playing every 3 or 4 days, and they just can't cope with it. He didn't use those words exactly, but it's a very confusing thing to say, Stephen, because I can't think of many other sides in this tournament who don't have a smattering of Premier League players.
Yeah.
And if they're not playing in England, they're playing in Germany, where you have just as many games. You play for Bayern Munich and you go to the latter stages of the Champions League. Your schedule is every bit as busy as Manchester United's or Liverpool's or Chelsea's.
It would affect almost every side.
Yes, exactly. And
So
they can't
it's
play in the
weak.
conditions, everything. So I think it's a bit weird. They were doing some yoga yesterday at their 5-star retreat. Yeah,
Try to find their zen.
stretch out their stay at the Euros, or show a bit of. They can't show tactical flexibility.
I mean,
that they are in
ultimately,
the
if they're
studio.
not fit enough, it's the manager's problem, isn't it?
Not necessarily. No, a manager wouldn't necessarily say that. He'd say that it's down to what they do in
when they're out of his.
Yeah, when they're out of it. I mean, they don't get much time to work with the players, but. You know, you can. I think the physical conditioning, the sports conditioning that they do. I mean, the sports science is so advanced now. They'll hope that they can peak later in the tournament. But the problem is they're not pressing at the front. So
But that's tactical, isn't it? That is managerial.
I would say it's tactical, yeah. But then if Harry Kane really is carrying an injury at the moment, he looks as if he's towing a trailer behind him, even though he did score the other night against Denmark. Then I think that's it's not. You're giving the opponents the ball. And when you give an opponent the ball, then they grow in confidence. That's just natural. That happens at any level of sport. And you know what? They were undone the other night by Christian Eriksen, who nearly died at the last tournament and has recovered from heart surgery. He can't even play in Italy for Inter Milan because they don't insure anybody who's got a pacemaker, so he can only play in the Premier League. And alongside him is another player coming towards the end of his career, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and they really did outfight the England players. And they're both Premier League players, Stephen. So they have the same number of commitments, the same number of games as any England player. For me, it's a weak excuse, and I can only hope that he's just deflecting right now and taking the pressure off. Well, I was going to say taking the pressure off the manager. To me, he's putting pressure on the players.
Yeah. And talking of surgery. That sounds sort of pretty serious surgery before a major tournament. Andy Murray is going to have back surgery. And yet still, and everybody's saying, will he be fit enough to play in Wimbledon? Well, back surgery sounds really serious.
It's today as well. So he has 9 days because the tournament at Wimbledon starts on July the 1st. He had a problem on Wednesday at Queen's, and he came off against Jordan Thompson with a neural problem, he described it as. He had the scan on Thursday, and he was given the option yesterday, shall I go for surgery now before the tournament or not? Now, he's so determined.
It can't be much of an op if he's going to be recovered and match fit in 9 days.
Well, we don't know. We can't. Yeah, I would think so. But in the statement yesterday, they said they don't know whether he's going to be fit. But his brother Jamie came out and said that I can't reveal too much detail in terms of the machinations of the surgery, the complications rather. But he's going to give it a go. It looks like. And you know what? If he doesn't make Wimbledon, I think there's a good chance he'll go to the Olympics. Was successful there in 2012. It'll be a nice place to say goodbye. But ideally, he wants to say goodbye at Wimbledon. You have to admire his get up and go, don't you? Really,
he's had so many operations, hasn't he?
I know he has. Yeah, I know. But he snapped his Achilles tendon early this year as well. So he's had the full gamut of injuries. But it's the way he plays. I mean, they all suffer degenerative joints. Every tennis player, even if you float around the courts and don't put as much pressure on your joints, like Roger Federer, for example. But if you play like Nadal, you play like Djokovic, you play like Murray, you are going to suffer injuries. And I just wonder, he's made his money. He's got 4 kids at home. He's won 3 Grand Slams. He's got an Olympic gold medal under his belt. I'm not really sure what keeps him going at this stage because he's not going to win the tournament, that's for sure.
No.
It's the very thing that made him a champ. Is what's keeping him trying to compete still. Just can't put it down.
Crazy. Maybe he just likes the propofol.
What's that?
That's what you get with your general anaesthetic. That's your general anaesthetic when you have an operation.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, propofol. It's blooming lovely, isn't
it? I'll bet.
It's that one where they ask you to count backwards and you get to about 8.
Yes, that's right. Wonderful.
And then you wake up 2 hours later feeling like, just magic.
I had kidney stones once really badly, and I was in hospital, and they gave me a shot of morphine.
Oh.
You feel it. I can't remember. I think they shot it in my thigh. You feel it going around the body. And
I had an operation about 10 years ago, and they asked me a question about QPR, and I was in mid-flow, and suddenly I don't remember staying awake after that.
I know, it's it.
I didn't need the anaesthetic.
Not that we're proposing that only when you need it.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Please. But yes, thank goodness for it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's miracle stuff, that. Anyway, right, Aidan, thank you. See you later on. Still to come, we'll take you through the papers with Stephanie Tecci and Kevin Schofield.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The new BBC Director of Sport, who's a man called Alex K. Jelski, who's downplayed fears raised by sports women about biological men competing in female categories. And he's also called Martina Navratilova, I've got to say, has to be probably the most successful woman tennis player in history, and a very brave woman too. She escaped the Iron Curtain and she came out. And Sharon Davis, he says, are not experts on the issue.
At the same time, transgender US swimmer Leah Thomas has lost her legal battle and been told that she cannot compete at the Olympics.
So Leah Thomas made an appeal to World Aquatics, who have this rule in place that says that they protect the female category, as does athletics and world cycling. And because Leah doesn't actually qualify, because Leah isn't training, so she's not even someone that would be potentially part of the Olympic team. They've just said that, you know, you don't qualify to be able to bring this case. It's been thrown out on a technicality, thank goodness, and which means that, you know, swimming will not have any males beating elite females in Paris this summer, which was particularly good for me, bearing in mind that I now have to be very careful about what I'm allowed to say and not say. We're not allowed to use the words biological male, transitioned male. I mean, just every single possible way that we could explain that the person in the race wasn't a female, and it only affects women. It doesn't affect men. You know, females that identify as male are no risk to men's sport in any shape or form. It's just women that are losing their opportunities. The thing I take the most offence to, and this is very serious, and this needs to be dealt with by the BBC, and this is why I wrote to Tim Davie. In that article, he compared males that are identifying as women in women's sport to Jamaican and Ethiopian females being allowed to compete.
What?
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It is 6:47. Let's have a look at some of the newspapers for you this morning.
Well, The Guardian leads with news that Russian hackers managed to access and steal an eye-watering 300 million NHS patient records.
The Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, is on the front of the Telegraph with her prediction that Starmer will reverse Brexit.
Nigel Farage's BBC interview leads the Mail after he sensationally claimed the West provoked Russia to invade Ukraine.
In an exclusive with The Times, J.K. Rowling accuses the Labour Party of turning its back on women.
And the I newspaper leads with the National Trust calling on UK political parties to sign a pledge to protect rivers from illegal sewage dumping.
All right, let's go through some of those with political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy. Good to see you both this morning. Kevin, let's start with The Guardian, should we? And this concerning theft of medical records.
Yeah, so Russian hackers stole 300 million patient records or interactions with the NHS, an organisation called Quillen. And they say that the government is considering striking back against the hackers. You'd like to think they would. You know, you wouldn't think they would just let them off with it. But I mean, the real worry here is that, you know, it exposes so many people to having their identity stolen, identity fraud. You know, it can be used to all sort of phishing attacks, all sorts of things. So the National Crime Agency has got involved naturally to try and get on top of this. But £40 million was the ransom that they asked for from the NHS.
So
and I've obviously said no.
Does that hitting back suggests that we're going to do it to them?
Well, yeah.
It's a funny phrase to use.
It is a strange phrase. I mean, you'd probably think it probably isn't. That is not what it involved.
No,
but you would look to try and crack down and toughen up the defences to try and prevent it happening again.
What would they do with that information?
So, well, handily, the Guardian has answered those questions, and it says that basically personal data can be deployed by these criminal gangs to carry out fraudulent activity. So they'll use it to identity theft, phishing attacks. So basically, once you've got your personal detail, you might have your blood records, you know, really personal stuff.
So it's not just a question of blackmail or something like that, which again could be part of the problem, but it's also the idea that I mean, data is gold nowadays, isn't it?
It's incredibly valuable commodity. Obviously, these criminal gangs will sell it. It will go around the houses. You know, they'll sell it to one another. That's how they make their money, I guess.
But I think there needs to be a transparency on how this even happened in the first place and how it will be avoided in the future. Because, rightly so, a lot of patients now are worried that actually my health records could be up for sale all over the world.
Well, in this case, it was outsourced, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was. The NHS had outsourced this data to another company.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly.
I don't know, because they were cheaper than doing it themselves.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it will be. But then you open yourself, you're exposed then, aren't you, more to...
You can't outsource it to people who don't have the right security systems.
That's the problem.
Well, that's it.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Let's have a look at the Telegraph, Stephanie. Kemi Badenoch is telling us that Brexit is a 10 to 20-year project, but Keir Starmer's going to scupper the lot.
Well, yeah, she's worried. Well, I think she's probably going to be the woman who's eyeing up the top job after Rishi leaves. But at the moment, she's saying that under a Labour government, Keir Starmer is going to reverse Brexit. She's now saying that Brexit is a 10 to 20-year project. And it does make me think if most people would have voted to leave if they knew it was going to be a 10 to 20-year project and they were transparent about that in the first place. Because at the moment, Keir Starmer is saying he is looking for more closer alliances with Brussels on things such as education, defence, security, and more EU standards on workers' rights and food standards. But, you know, tomorrow will be the 8th anniversary since people voted to leave.
Is it really?
8 years. And so if we do reflect in the past 8 years, what has really been achieved for Brexit? So maybe we have reached that crunch point where maybe we do need to be building those alliances again with Brussels, but also for people who did vote to leave. Are they happy with what's been achieved, and are they happy to wait, as Kemi's calling it, 10 to 20 years to see any benefits of leaving the EU?
But who knew that it was just a 10 to 15-year project?
Well, yeah, I don't remember that coming up in the campaign. I don't remember Leave saying vote to leave the EU and in 20 years' time things are going to be great. I mean,
well, they didn't
would
say
never
that.
have won on that basis. So I think that's quite a revealing comment. What's interesting is that Brexit hasn't really been mentioned in the election campaign.
No.
Remarkably. You think the last election was all about, get Brexit
but
done.
in a way, why would it? Because... because Starmer has... I mean, whatever Kemi Badenoch is saying, Starmer's saying, no, we're not going back into the EU.
Yeah.
And obviously Tories don't want to go back into the EU. Reform definitely don't
know.
So why mention it?
Well, Labour are desperate not to talk about it because obviously all those red wall voters who voted to leave and then abandoned Labour in 2019, they don't want to think that Labour will backslide on Brexit, so they just want to basically pretend it didn't happen.
So that's why she's saying what she's saying.
Well, she's raising
She's just trying to get those red wall voters, or the red wall don't knows, to still vote Conservative.
It's more Project Fear, really, from the Conservatives, because, they're throwing as much mud at Labour and Keir Starmer as they possibly can. As July the 4th gets closer, but nothing seems to be sticking.
We're down to our last minute or so. Kevin, can we have a look at the Mail? We've got to talk about Nigel Farage interview last night, in which he said the West provoked Russia into invading Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, pretty incendiary comments. His argument is that the eastward expansion of the EU and NATO basically allowed Putin to turn around to his people and say, we're under attack, therefore we've got to fight back. I think quite a controversial statement, to put it mildly.
It's one thing to say, to try to understand the mindset of the Russians and the Russian people in all of this, but it's slightly different to say it was a provocation, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he's trying to excuse what Russia did, and let's not forget Russia invaded another sovereign country.
But he didn't say it was a deliberate provocation. He just said because of the way it happened, Russia interpreted it as a deliberate provocation.
Yeah, well, he says that Putin was able then to turn it into a propaganda move, basically to say, well, look, they're coming for us, so we've got to go after them. I think provoked, though it's such an incendiary device, it's almost like he's saying, you know, we're to blame for the invasion.
But it's another sort of, it's not a misquote, but it's another sort of taking slightly out of context. If you hear the whole interview, he rounded it off much more gently than the headline would suggest.
Yeah, although Nick Robinson did pick him up on it and said, we provoked him, and he didn't say no.
We're out of time.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Back in
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just one or two pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England. But for most, it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of one or two showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning to you. 7 o'clock, Saturday, the 22nd of June. Today, a politician of the people, Sir Keir Starmer, tells GB News he wouldn't use private health care even if his children were ill.
I elected him to serve as Prime Minister. My job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
Meanwhile, Labour pledges to get tough with water companies. We'll be talking to the Shadow Environment Secretary, Steve Reed, shortly.
The problem that just won't go away. The Prime Minister refuses to say whether a cabinet minister is involved in the Tory gambling scandal.
And is it a step too far? That's what some are saying after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
The search for missing teenager Jay Slater enters its 6th day in Tenerife as British police say Spanish officers have refused their help.
They stand on the verge of history. Scotland finalised their preparations ahead of a decisive clash with Hungary tomorrow in Stuttgart. Gareth Southgate, meanwhile, says his England stars aren't fit enough, and Andy Murray will undergo back surgery today as he enters a race to be fit in time for Wimbledon.
It's a bit of a dull start for some of us this morning, but generally a fine summer's day today, and many of us will have some sunshine on Sunday as well. And it's warming up. Join me later for a full forecast.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, awful lot going on gbnews.com/yoursay this morning. And a lot of you, it has to be said, not at all put off by what Nigel Farage said yesterday in that controversial interview about the West provoking Russia into invading Ukraine. I tell you what I would love to do is talk to someone who really understands the Russia situation.
Like Robert Fox.
Yeah, someone like Robert Fox, to see how...
you see, it's a viewpoint I've heard many times before.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Also, it'd be great to get Nigel on, wouldn't it? But to get that... there's a difference between understanding Russia's mindset and to say, well, we did push it too far. Do you stop the expansion of NATO? I mean, do you have to have a buffer zone? Or should Russia not be reacting in the way it was? Or was it, as someone said on The Views this morning, you don't poke the bear? I don't know. It's difficult.
I mean, it's a controversial view, but a lot of people feel that you have to accept, don't you? You have to try and understand why they act the way they do. I mean, a lot of young kids ask over the years, say, why is America so hated in the world? I mean, it isn't hated everywhere, but there are countries that absolutely hate America. And it's worthwhile understanding why. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Just listening to Nigel Farage say that the way he did doesn't mean you have to agree that the war is in any way justified.
He did go on to say...
He rounded it off, you see, if you listen to the whole context of the interview.
He did say it is Putin's fault.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, but of course we're in an election period, less than 2 weeks to go. Therefore, people have jumped on it. Former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has said, "Well, he's more Chamberlain than Churchill." I haven't got the Labour Party quotes with him, but the Labour Party's jumped all over it as well, as you would expect.
I'm not sure he is more Chamberlain than Churchill. I think Nigel Farage, put on the spot, could be quite formidable as a leader, don't you think?
You would imagine so. You would imagine so, wouldn't you? But it's difficult. But it's one of those issues that will rile a lot of people. But you've got to look into the context of it. I mean, and that's the thing. And then come to your own opinion, I guess. Anyway, should we crack on with politics? Because yesterday, actually very good that we got to sit down with a man who hopes to be the Prime Minister in a couple of weeks, Sir Keir Starmer.
Yes, he was answering the questions that you sent in. So please do keep them coming, because this is the first of many interviews to come with other party leaders. And in the exclusive interview, he refused 4 times to say that he would pay for private healthcare for his children if they badly needed treatment and were stuck on an NHS waiting list.
Meanwhile, after missing out on the BBC Question Time Leaders Special, Nigel Farage, as we were just saying, took part in an interview with Nick Robinson from the BBC. He suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO.
Well, let's take a look back at the last 24 hours in politics.
Pay for private healthcare to effectively jump the waiting list.
Yes.
I wouldn't. The idea of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is responsible for bringing waiting lists down,
yes,
then saying to the public, but so far as I'm concerned, I'm going to jump the list.
But you can afford to. Most people on a good wage do afford it and pay for it.
If I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
This is a man who tried to overturn the result of the Brexit referendum, who twice urged everyone to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and who ran on a series of pledges to be Labour leader that he cynically then abandoned. My friends, because he has such a past, he doesn't deserve to decide your future.
If people know the outcome of something and they bet on it, I think that's immoral.
We've provoked this war. Of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary-General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansion.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's just hopped off the battle bus, or one of the battle buses, or something. They come from somewhere, Catherine.
Where was I? I was in North Wales yesterday, very briefly, and then back here.
Yes,
and
I know. It's stunning, because if you watch the programme, as I did yesterday, you're in one part of the country at the beginning of the programme. By the end of the programme, you're outside Westminster. It's crazy. It must be exhausting.
It's all a bit of a blur, and I was thinking yesterday... one of the visits with the Prime Minister, where we were at a farm, he was doling out, as he periodically does, sliced cake with butter to the journalists and the sort of press pack. And 3 weeks earlier, we were in another seat and he was doling out ice cream. But the difference in mood between those 3 weeks, I mean, he's still... obviously trying to be upbeat and positive and bouncy. But, at the beginning of the campaign, even though they were 20 points behind in the polls, they did feel like it was all to play for, that something might turn up, whereas
it really hasn't.
It's hard to see. The gap hasn't moved. They've had several disasters, the D-Day debacle being one of them, then this huge betting scandal that he really didn't want to talk about. It feels like they've had no luck. And, it's very hard for him, isn't it?
I mean, even in the clip we were just playing a second ago, he doesn't sound like he's got it anymore. He just seemed quite defeated. I mean, look, I have some sympathy with him. I mean, there's a lot on his shoulders.
Yeah, a lot on his shoulders, and it always astonished me how upbeat he and he's still trying, but my goodness, you know, it's been one thing after another. And yesterday, you know, he wanted to talk about the Conservative manifesto for Wales. I have to say, he spent a lot of the time bad-mouthing Labour, basically trying to scare people, saying, look, this is the Labour's record in Wales, don't vote for them, don't give them a blank cheque. He's going to rig it by giving 16, 17-year-olds are going to stay in power for ages. But, you know, this betting scandal for people that we know of with close links to the PM under investigation. He was asked by 3 separate journalists in the Q&A afterwards, I was one of them, about this. Why hadn't he at least suspended the candidates? He just does not want to go there. Whether he thinks that if he does, that's going to create more bad headlines, you could argue that if you suspend them, you try to draw a line under it. But, you know, these awkward questions are just not going away, and this is the last thing they need. And who knows, there may be more to come.
If he suspended them, as some of them are candidates, that means you leave a constituency without a Conservative candidate.
Well, sure, but, you know, they're going to lose so many seats, potentially, that, you know, is it worth the political capital? And, you know, there are plenty of precedents for MPs, let alone candidates, sitting MPs, being suspended while investigations are ongoing. He doesn't have to wait for the outcome of the investigations by the Gambling Commission or police to act. This is a choice that he is making. Now, he's obviously got his reasons for doing that. But, you know, on the bus as well, afterwards, we went round and round, all the journalists, on and on and on. And he just
There's a picture of you, actually,
line.
on the bus. I must say, you all look as though you're enjoying yourselves there.
Oh, it says the Times. That's the Guardian, actually.
Yeah, it's the Guardian.
Yeah, my face looks wider than it does top to bottom. I look quite as fat looking at myself now.
You're on the edge of a wide lens camera. Don't worry about that.
Thank you.
But it just shows you have light moments, but you say the mood is very, very different.
We were joking about the football, and one of the other political correspondents whose knowledge of football is pretty much as bad as mine, so we were teasing him. So, yeah, there are light moments. But overall, you know, the mood as was and the mood now are quite different.
I mean, it's going to be the exact opposite, isn't it, on the Labour battle boss with all of this. However, there are still these issues, and we saw it last night, talking to Christopher Hope. Keir Starmer still facing this issue, and it's daft things, because it's the questions that, you know, are all hypothetical. If your children were very ill and there was a very long waiting list, would you go for private health care? It just seems crazy that someone would say, well, if I could find the money, I would do it. But instead just going, no, absolutely not, no. Which won't wash with a lot of people who would just want him to be realistic and normal and like us.
Yeah, that's getting a lot of attention, isn't it? And I think there's a couple of things there. First, when he was put on the spot in that debate, a couple of weeks ago, and he said no, I think that took a lot of people by surprise. And now when Chris Hope, our political editor, pushed him, you know, say if it was a child, he still said no. I think a lot of people will think that very odd. But I think probably a couple of things going on there. First of all, if having said definitively no, he now goes, oh, well, maybe for my son, daughter, then, of course, we'll get the Mr. Flip-Flop, can't stick to anything, change his mind. And I think the other thing is, what it does show is his personal, very real connection to the NHS, and that his mother, who he clearly adored, was in and out of NHS hospitals throughout her life, and they did take amazing care of her. And he did say, you know, if you are critically ill, the NHS is absolutely the best place to be. And if you're, you know, in a private hospital, often they might send you to the NHS. That's where you get the best care at a critical level.
He's got potentially an easy win if he just says, well, I would like to think I could. But, you know, for the last 14 years, the Tories have brought down the NHS. I mean, you know, you can... It reminds me of my Dennis Healey moment in 1987, when Dennis Healey had made an absolute bean feast of the fact that Margaret Thatcher had had a private hand operation. And he'd absolutely gone for her about that during an election campaign. And then the Sun newspaper found out that Edna Healy had a private operation as well. And Dennis Healy went completely bonkers when I put that to him. But it is one of those moments where private NHS, when do you do it, when do you don't, is obviously still sensitive all these years later.
Yes, and I think, obviously, if you are the Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer potentially will be 2 weeks from now, I think a lot of people would think if you need treatment, get the treatment because it might stop you from running the country. But I think also just worth saying that the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, he's had cancer himself and he had a scare recently and he didn't go private, but he has said, I did think of it if I had to wait a long time. And I think most people would say, fair enough, something, you know, if you think it might be cancer and you can go private, you know, you can understand why he might. But to Keir Starmer was saying, look, I don't have any ideological objection or I don't judge people who do. But, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Quick word about Nigel, because we shouldn't really call him Nigel, should we?
Mr Farage.
Look, a lot of our viewers this morning saying, look, we agree with what he was saying last night. However, it is controversial.
Well, yes, and he's saying, look, I have been consistent and honest. I've said since the 1990s, when NATO began expanding to the east, that, you know, this is unwise and this is going to be provoking to Russia. The problem for him is, of course, that the nuance of this argument is getting lost because some people will say, well, look, he's being an apologist for Vladimir Putin. There's no excuse. While Nigel Farage said, of course, it is Putin's fault. But, you know, he's also saying we provoked it. And he also said, I think 10 years ago, Nick Robinson wheeled out some quote that Vladimir Putin was the world leader that he most admired. So I think it is potentially problematic because although this is a long-held position of his, I think there'll be plenty of people going to vote for reform that maybe haven't heard this before. And, of course, reform holds itself up as being very fiercely patriotic. So I think this possibly could come back to bite him with some voters.
You're sort of... It's always the same, isn't it? You're dyed-in-the-wool reform supporters at the moment won't mind, but it's those people that obviously reform are wanting to win over from other parties.
Yeah, and of course what it's done is it's given the Conservatives and Labour an open goal to have a go at him because clearly the Conservatives would dearly love to find something which will stick to hurt Reform's poll ratings, which are starting to overtake.
We were sort of noticing, you can't help noticing that every leader now has an Achilles heel moment and a sort of question that you can keep nagging them about. Is it the pressure of an election campaign in the end? This always happens.
I think it is, to be honest. And, you know, they come out with all the sort of positive things that they think they're going to do. And now we seem to be in the phase of, you know, like yesterday in Wales, there was just so much going on the attack, trying to say, don't give Labour your vote because they're going to do this, trying to scare people to the negative campaigning. And Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, really hasn't wanted to go there, but I thought it was noticeable yesterday that he really did go on the attack. And he was like, you know, so Keir Starmer was the man that campaigned to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister twice. He was the man that tried to get a second referendum, etc.
But it's interesting. It was I think it was Alexander Downer, wasn't it, a couple of days ago, who was saying, opposition leader in Australia, Liberal Party leader, which is like our version of the Tories, who said the campaigning has been all wrong for the Conservatives here and they should have just been on the attack from the position they were already in.
Well, certainly there's been plenty of calls for Rishi Sunak to do that. But, you know, a lot of people don't like that. And so many people are so disengaged, disillusioned. I see it wherever I go in the country. So many people just saying they're all the same, and quite a lot of people just saying we're not voting, they're all the same. Whatever they say, they make these promises. And I think the negative campaigning, you know, will turn people off. But it can be very effective. And, you know, the Conservatives putting out messages, you know, nothing seems to have worked. It'll be interesting to see. I suspect we might have quite a few more sort of personal attacks. Yeah.
And we shall see. Catherine, thanks very much indeed.
It is a shame, isn't it, when the politicians get personally attacked. You can't help feeling it gives the wrong feeling to the whole election campaign.
No.
And it provokes a lot of nasty comments as well on social media, and I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we could all be more positive. Tell you what, let's move on at the moment, 18 minutes past 7, to the search for missing British teenager Jay Slater, because now it's the 6th day of searching for him in Tenerife.
Well, police on the island say the search is going to focus on a rural village and a valley. That's after the 19-year-old went missing on what was his first holiday ever without his parents. Earlier, we spoke to former police officer Oliver Lawrence.
The search and rescue operation, which enters a lengthy period of time, as you say, we're into day 6. There are obviously greater concerns held for the welfare of Mr. Slater, who's been missing since early Monday morning when he messaged a friend to advise that he only had 1% of battery, was lost in the mountains, which is an incredibly vast area, and needed water. So we know the circumstances under which he went missing weren't brilliant at all in terms of him needing water, and was probably getting tired and disorientated and got lost. So this is a vast area that local police are searching. There has been some early criticism of their communication with the family and the efforts they're putting into certain areas. And obviously we know, as of in the last 24, 48 hours, Lancashire Police have reached out to local authorities to provide some level of assistance. That assistance has been turned down at the moment, and the search continues. But as this goes on, obviously the concerns begin to grow as to the welfare of Mr. Slater.
I mean, is there any implied criticism then of the police on Tenerife, or do they just feel justified in saying, no, look, we've got everybody on it and we're coping?
I think every police service deserves the right to assess a situation in their own right. They believe they've got the resources to carry out this search and rescue operation. It is an incredibly vast area which needs to ultimately be grid searched very painstakingly during daylight hours, because after night you're going to miss things. Obviously, they're using helicopters and dogs and resources that we've seen been used in other search and rescue operations in the last few weeks overseas with other cases. But these are very protracted investigations. Obviously, what doesn't help is the size and scale of the area. An 11-hour walk Mr. Slater was looking at, and to get disorientated in such a complex area means the task is even greatly difficult for police to try and identify where he is, with so many areas where he could be, potentially sitting there waiting for support.
Well, let's hope something happens today, because it must be absolute torture for his family.
Absolutely. 20 minutes past 7. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom this morning.
Well, 2 women have been charged with criminal damage after Just Stop Oil activists sprayed orange paint on private jets at Stansted Airport on Thursday. Jennifer Kowalski, who's 28, and Cole MacDonald, who's 22, are alleged to have caused over £5,000 worth of damage. The pair are due to appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court later today.
After months of speculation, it seems the King and Queen are going to confirm an official visit to Australia and Samoa for later this year. Apparently, the original plan had them going to New Zealand as well, but the trip's been scaled back because of the King's cancer treatment.
Taylor Swift has kicked off the London leg of her Eras tour with the first of 3 sold-out shows at Wembley Stadium. Fans descended on the capital in their masses, with attendees including everyone from Sir Keir Starmer to the Prince of Wales and his 3 young children. Tonight, another 90,000 fans will make the journey to celebrate the Princess of
And Dame Esther Ranson is 84 today, a day she says she never thought she'd reach. She was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer last year and has since campaigned to legalise assisted dying in the UK.
So happy birthday, Dame Esther. It's amazing to think she's 84, actually. I mean, she's, I just can't believe it, really.
No, been around forever, though.
She really has.
Stalwart of our televisions.
And a total national treasure. Yeah.
Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east We'll see some sunny spells, just 1 or 2 pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England, but for most it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of 1 or 2 showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for the Great British Giveaway now. Wake up.
I was reading the paper. Do apologise.
It's Great British Giveaway time. Your chance to win over 16 grand's worth of prizes. We caught up with a previous winner, John from North Yorkshire, who got his 20 grand prize from us this week. Here's what he had to say about it.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British Giveaway. Well, there I was, sitting in the garden with a cup of coffee, and then I got this phone call out of the blue, and I thought, what's this about? And then it all became apparent. I have to say, I kept thinking several times a day, wow, I've got £20,000 coming. That's fantastic. And then, of course, when it arrived, I do have something to spend it on. I've never actually won anything like this before, but of course if you're not in you can't win, but it didn't cost much to enter, and here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
Bet you are.
Nice little present.
Right, well, you could be our next big giveaway winner with 15 grand in cash and a whole host of goodies. Here's how you can win.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, still to come, we're going to talk to the Shadow Environment Secretary about Labour's plans to hold water companies to account.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance,
This
John.
is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
And you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich statement. We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Election party. It's like a Eurovision party, only longer.
Yeah, very much longer. Absolutely. You'll have to make up your mind. You know how you have a drink every time a certain word is mentioned. You have to decide what the word is.
Well, you should have a drink every have a drink every time a seat is declared.
Yes.
Because I'll keep you busy. Come about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I love election programs. So we've just got to go over to wherever, you know, blah, blah, blah. And their returning officer gets up and makes this enormous speech about thanking everybody before they even get going. And you think, come on, we want to know, we want to know. And you can very often tell by the look on their faces because the candidates already know.
But what's interesting is the returning officers always want to extend their part because they know they're in the spotlight. It's their 15 minutes of fame. Yeah. I tell you who's like that. Ada McGee, good morning.
I went to an election night show in 1997 at the BBC at TV Centre. Do you remember Armando Iannucci, David Snyder, Steve Coogan? They did this whole election thing, and I think it was obviously to wipe out for the Tories. I think the Conservatives won a seat just as we were leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So, but it was a good show, though.
And did you see Michael Portillo the other day on GB News talking about the Portillo moment?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Oh, it was fascinating. Yeah, it'll be on the website. It's really, really interesting because everybody talks about that Portillo moment. But to actually hear him talking about it...
They mispronounced his middle name, didn't they?
I don't know. I think that was
Xavier.
Xavier, yes, that's right. That was the least of his worries.
I know it was, exactly.
Is that his middle name?
Yeah.
Xavier, yes.
How extraordinary.
It's a wonderful name, though, isn't it, to go to school with? Xavier.
Some funny name.
Xavier Portillo is
Scotland are looking for a Xavier tomorrow night.
Oh, very good. What a segue. Go on, then, because they're facing Hungary, aren't they?
They are indeed. Well, look, we discussed it on Thursday, didn't we, after they played against Switzerland. They got a very creditable draw, and from being... this day last week, we were talking about a terrible 5-1 defeat against Germany, but suddenly things look different. I would argue that the mood in the Scotland camp now is actually more upbeat than you'd find in England right now because, you know, from being almost on, well, not on the verge of elimination because they only lost one game. They were battered 5-1 in that first.
So where do they stand now in the groupings?
Well, they're third in the table, but if they win tomorrow against Hungary, who are bottom of the group, Hungary are no mugs, by the way. They may have lost 2 matches, but they played 2 very good teams. But as well as each group having the top 2 sides going up, there's also space for the 4 best third-place teams. And now Scotland, if they win tomorrow night, no side on 4 points has ever failed to go through to the next round. So if they win, it's fairly clear. So let's see what happens. I mean, it's going to be difficult for Scotland anyway.
That's right. I tell you what, Aidan, we're going to butt in, but we will come back to you a little bit later on. This is just because the Shadow Secretary of State for the Environment, Steve Reid, is standing by, poised and ready to go. Good morning to you, Steve. Nice to see you this morning. Here's one for you, and I know you're probably expecting it, but if you had a child who is in urgent need of medical attention and there was a very long waiting list on the NHS, would you use private healthcare?
I think if it was in that circumstance and they weren't going to be treated on the NHS and I had the means, but obviously what we want to do is improve the NHS so people aren't confronted with that terrible choice. And for many people, of course, it's not a choice. If you haven't got the money, you just have to sit there and watch your child suffer. And no parent should be put in that position.
And I guess that's what Sir Keir Starmer should have said, isn't it?
Well, it's up to Keir to say what he thinks. What we all want to do in the Labour Party is improve the NHS. It's got record waiting list at the moment, just shy of 8 million people. That's almost the entire retired population of the UK. And what Labour's proposing to do is we're going to close the non-dom tax loophole, which is where foreign billionaires living in our country pay less tax than the guy that cuts my hair. And by doing that, we can fund 40,000 additional appointments every week in the NHS and start to reduce those waiting lists. So that is the approach that we will take. We don't want people to be forced to go private. People pay national insurance to fund our National Health Service, and it should be there for them when they need it, when their families need it. But under the Conservatives, unfortunately, it isn't.
The problem is with that, and I know it's going back on a point, but you keep mentioning this non-dom business. I mean, the more you close the non-dom tax loophole, the fewer non-doms are going to come here, and therefore that is a revenue stream that over time is just going to decrease.
Well, there isn't much evidence to back up what you're saying there, actually. People are living in this country because they enjoy living in this country. And it seems to me only fair, and I suspect most of your viewers will feel the same, that if you're living in this country and enjoying the benefits of this country, then you should pay taxes in your country. Nearly all of us do. This is a tiny number of people who are getting away without paying that tax, and they happen to be some of the wealthiest people on the planet. So all we're doing is asking them to pay their fair share. I don't think that's wrong, but it can help us to start to reduce the pressure on our NHS so we can get those massive waiting lists down. I've got people in my constituency who've gone to A&E and been waiting there for 24 hours. That's shocking. We should be nothing like that situation in our country. So we have to start moving to address that. But of course, the way that we can really tackle all of these problems in our public services is to get back to growth in our economy so that we get the income coming into the exchequer that can fund the improvements in our public services that we need.
Generally, across the country this weekend, it's going to be pretty good weather. And they're saying that we're due a heat wave next week. But you can't go swimming in the sea very safely or in a river. The state of our waterways and sea is absolutely appalling. And the National Trust is clearly trying to get politicians on board. They're challenging UK leaders to save Britain's rivers. They want you to sign up to something saying that you will take certain steps to improve the environment. It's your battleground, as it were. What are you going to do about it? What about the fact that, for instance, water company bosses have taken home more than £100 million in salaries and bonuses over the past 10 years, despite, as we all know, so many of them doing a really appalling job? What are you really going to do about this?
Well, you just made the point absolutely brilliantly there. And as you can see, I'm in a hotel room at the moment. I'm down in Bournemouth. And we're down here to campaign against about exactly what your viewers are seeing on their screens now. Pipes pumping raw sewage out into the water here. There are beaches in Bournemouth that get closed on some days in the summer because the level of sewage, raw sewage, is so high it's dangerous it's dangerous to go in the water. Over the whole country, levels of raw sewage in our water are at record levels, the highest ever recorded. And yet the Conservatives have let the water companies who are responsible for this just get away with it. So if there's a Labour government elected on the 4th of July, what we will do is put the water companies under tough special measures. And that means making the water bosses who are overseeing this face criminal charges if they don't do anything to clean it up. But secondly, you referred there to the £100 million of bonuses that they've been able to award themselves for catastrophic failure. We will ban the payment of those bonuses until they clean up this toxic filth. Because I do
Shouldn't
not
they be
want
made to pay it back? Shouldn't they be made to pay some of these bonuses back?
Well, it's very difficult to claw money back once it's been given out under the Conservatives. What we can do is make sure they don't get any more with a Labour government. There are 10,000 people since the last general election who have been hospitalised with waterborne diseases. They've been made so ill by going in the sea or in a river that they've ended up in hospital. That's kids as well. Many parents are afraid to put their kids in the water because of what's going on. That is not the state this country should be in, and we tackle it by stopping going soft on the water companies like the Conservatives have put them under special measures. Water bosses who continue to behave like that will end up in the dock. That will focus their minds. And instead of the millions of pounds going to pay their bonuses, that money will go to fix the broken water infrastructure.
Why don't you just renationalise it?
Well, because renationalisation would take years, and during that time, the situation in the water would get worse and worse and worse. And I want us to be able to take action as quickly as possible. But nationalisation, of course, would also cost tens of billions of pounds, and that money isn't available. We have to get back to growing this economy, and we have to get back to clean water. The country's crying out for change. We can make change in the water industry by putting the water companies under tough special measures, and we could do that quicker than by any alternative route to cleaning up the water.
OK, Steve Reid, we've got to leave it there, but appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Very glad he's in Bournemouth too. I've got family in Bournemouth, and they go out jogging early in the morning, and you can see the raw sewage being pumped into the sea.
I mean, it is disgusting. And it is a scandal that it is happening. But special measures, is that enough?
No, don't think it is.
I mean, that's the thing. It's one of those things that sounds well and good, but actually what difference would it make immediately? And I just don't know. It sounds good.
Yeah.
But...
Is it? You actually want to hear tough... it's very, very difficult, but I think certain people should go to jail, and they should certainly be made to pay their bonuses back.
Yes, as he says...
It's almost as big a scandal as the post office scandal. To render our water unworthy is an appalling crime.
I do think he's got a point in saying claiming money back is a different kettle of fish, but stopping it being paid out in the first place. But I don't know if you'll ever get to the root of the problem with that. And I'm not a big fan of renationalising stuff.
No.
It's not sort of my mindset at all.
But
However, you do wonder with something... Because you don't really get a choice with your water supplier, do you?
Exactly. What sort of rot and decadence is there in the management of certain companies that think it's OK, whilst they know they're pumping raw sewage into the sea, to award themselves bonuses?
I don't know.
It's rotten.
I don't know. But you... Right. Anyway, look, we're going to take a short break and we're back with more in just a minute.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
In fact, we've got to sort
Very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't. I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting? What's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yes.
Well, there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking, and all the rest of it. On the flip side, I know a couple who, the pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. So I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar. We used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with. She was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political. You wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We're both reading a huge sigh of relief.
Very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running
Thank
out
you.
of
Not
time.
as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, you know, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel. I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's see what's in the papers for you this morning. Political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and the most glamorous showbiz reporter in the country, Stephanie Tedeschi. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Kevin, we better talk tax and Labour's secret tax plan in the Sun.
Yes, so the Tories have really been hammering Labour on tax. They see this as a weakness, and Labour have insisted they won't put up VAT, income tax or national insurance, but a lot of people, including the Tories, are saying, well, hang on a minute, you have to find money from somewhere because your sums don't add up. And the Sun is reporting on a document which has been discovered by The Guardian, actually, which shows that Labour are considering putting up capital gains tax to generate £8 billion and other tax measures, inheritance tax overhaul, etc., which would bring in another £10 billion, so £18 billion. So it's interesting whether or not, one, this will cut through. You know, it seems to be already priced in that the Tories are going to get hammered. But whether or not people actually are worried about paying more tax or not, you know, because you see polling, people say, well, actually, they'd rather more money went into public services than get a tax cut. But it's easy to say that to a pollster, but when it's actually hitting you in the pocket, you know,
but
when it comes to...
But for most people, it won't hit them in the pocket.
Well, that's true. You know, income tax, VAT, and national insurance, those are the big ones.
But most people, when asked that
capital
question,
gains tax,
say they wouldn't mind paying more tax as long as they could have better service.
Yeah.
And that is the most important bit, isn't it,
Exactly.
really?
Mm-hmm.
If you can actually see an improved service
They don't want to
and
pay
you
more
feel better about
for a
it,
bad service.
then, a penny more here and there on tax.
No, totally. But I'm sure the Conservatives will leap on this and say, I told you, this is what they're planning, tax bombshell, etc., etc. But I'm not sure it'll make much of a difference.
No.
Yeah, I think it's a little too late because I think most people have accepted we are going to have a Labour government, but as well, most people are accepting it's going to be a government of surprises because all through this election campaign, it's like people asking, actually, what does Keir Starmer stand for? What is his policies? What are we actually bringing ourselves into? But I think more than anything, people are just fed up of the Conservatives at this point. So we are going to be in for a bit of a shock once the Labour Party do actually come in and these tax cuts do come in. So I think, you know what, it's just something we're going to have to take as a, you know, as a backup for us not wanting the Conservatives anymore.
Yeah, well, we have to suck it and see, aren't we? A big Labour supporter, Ian McKellen, fell on me, says someone in the Mail, Stephanie.
Yes, Johanna Dart. So we had that awful occurrence, what happened at the beginning of the week, where Sir Ian McKellen fell off stage during Players King at the Noel Coward Theatre. But a lot of the newspapers, of course, were focusing on Sir Ian McKellen, but not Johanna Dart, who Ian McKellen actually dropped on top of. So she's come out and she was actually rushed to hospital and she had soft tissue injuries. And she said, actually, all the staff at the theatre theatre were more concerned about Sir Ian McKellen, she had to make her own way to the hospital. And she said, you know, this is not really on. Like, I just got forgotten about. And you know what? They're actually lucky that she's okay, because if not, this could have been a, you know, potentially more damaging situation. And by the way she's giving the interviews to the newspapers, I won't be surprised if she is looking to sue at some point.
Well, maybe so.
The
only thing I'd say is she's 30, he's 85.
Yeah.
So you would always look after
but it's still a nasty moment having somebody on top
I
of
think
you.
someone would look after you.
And there's no doubt, the way it was reported, we didn't know until now that he'd actually landed on a person.
Some nights just assumed he'd hit the ground.
Anyway, look, we need to leave it there, you two, just for now. But we are back for more papers. No, don't go anywhere. We're back for more papers in just a minute.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Helen Worth, who of course plays Gail Platt in Coronation Street, is going to leave the soap after an epic 50 years. I'm joined now by another Corrie legend, Charlie Lawson, whose character, of course, Jim MacDonald, lived across the cobbles from Gail Platt for many years. Welcome to the show, Charlie. I can see you looking at those images there, and it has to be said, fantastic acting. In 50 years, many of us just grew up with these characters and basically think they're part of our family. Can you shed light on some of your happy memories of the talent of Helen Worth?
We saw each other every day. She was a consummate professional and still is. This initially surprised me, but then I thought about it, and I'm frankly not surprised. Having spoken to certain senior members of the cast over the last period of time, you know, when Helen joined, or even when I joined, there was a cast of 25. I would put another 75 on that now, perhaps. It's a different animal now, totally, you know, 4, 5, 6 episodes a week. When Helen started, it would have been 2. She lives in London. She's not getting any younger. And she's done 50 years, for God's sake. Nobody can ask any more of that. And listen, Helen, look at that wee smile. God bless you, darling. I hope you have a great retirement. The trouble with actors is that we very, very rarely hang our boots up unless the bank balance is full, which it very seldom is. But also, we live for attention. And when you're in the most famous program on the planet, that attention 9 times out of 10 is an extremely good experience.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be that.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Kevin and Stephanie taking us through the papers. Can we talk Taylor Swift and the biggest Swiftie of them all, it would seem, Stephanie?
It's
the Prince of Wales.
The Prince of Wales. I was quite shocked, actually. But actually, the Prince of Wales and Taylor go way back. We're talking back to 2013.
Yeah, they've even sung together.
They have, living on a prayer at a charity concert at Kensington Palace 10 years ago. But it seems that they've kept in contact because Prince William hired out a private box last night at Wembley Stadium to celebrate his 42nd birthday, and he was there with his 3 children, which I think is quite nice. But beyond that, Taylor had 90,000 people for her concert. She's literally taken over the UK with all of her concerts, and it just goes to show her popularity. She is a great musician, and even
massive
performing live.
I mean, she is literally phenomenal. It's incredible how...
I know you're a huge fan.
we have her in the car because the kids like her. And there's some really good tunes, I've got to say.
Yeah?
You know, genuinely.
Grown
That's my name, any of them, but yeah.
Shrinkflation, Kevin.
No, yeah.
Which I know affects us all, but surely not toilet rolls.
Toilet, can you believe it? So Waitrose has reduced the length of its toilet rolls by a quarter.
A quarter?
That's travesty. But still charge the same amount. So this is shrinkflation. You're paying the same for less. So it says here that a 16-roll essential white ultra-soft bathroom tissue has been reduced the number of sheets from 240 to 190.
That's really bad.
And the sheets themselves are smaller by 5%. So
they're not thinner, are they? Because that would be an
that's
issue.
a worry.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, they're not thinner. They're just smaller. So one customer said, "I was shocked when I opened the pack to find that it was totally different."
Absolutely.
Cut short.
I don't think people would notice that the toilet would be a bit smaller.
Hang on a minute, there's something different about this. I got my finger on it.
I would know about the texture, but not the size.
That's attacking the British
That's
way
a lot of sheets. That's
life
50
in a very
sheets.
sinister way.
50 sheets. I don't want to go into how many visits that is to the toilet. That's
No,
a few.
no,
It's
we
a
don't want to
few.
get
It's a
there,
few.
no.
I just think, of all the things,
Yes.
leave
There's
that
nothing
well
sacred.
alone.
There's nothing sacred.
Have you said earlier on, there's a fella's opened his jammy Dodgers and there's none in them.
No jam in them.
jam in them.
No jam.
How did that happen?
I don't know.
A Dodger.
It's a scandal. Right, thanks both. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just one or two pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England. But for most, it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of one or two showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, cash. Text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer. Weekends from 3 p.m.
What about the elections? Because it seems that the King and everything is moving because of it, and we've got a lot of royal engagements and things that happen at this time.
Yes, well, you know, it means that he has to take more time and be at home. He can't go to all the things he wants to do. He's been doing 5 a day, which is probably made Camilla a bit cross. But what they still hope is that they can get the Japanese Emperor and Empress over. That's in July. That they can go to France for the 80th anniversary of the fighting. And he will be able to do 1 or 2 things, and Ascot he's very keen to do. Now, those aren't things that are political in any way. I just want to talk about Harry and Charles's argument, where Harry said he didn't want to stay, he wanted to go to a hotel. And it's come out now that actually King Charles is believed that he was offered St James's, and Princess Anne stays there, and Beatrice stays there.
And this was for when Harry came over for his 10th
yeah,
anniversary
exactly. And the policemen are wandering around with guns, and there's no chance of actually there being any problem there. So the fact that he said that it wasn't safe for him was not actually a very sensible thing to say, I don't think.
Well, you went to Nigeria, and that is, in the world ranking, it's ranked as quite a dangerous place.
Yes, one of the dangerous places in the world. But now Harry and Meghan have been invited to go to Ghana.
Oh, God. Well, it's interesting because my parents are from Ghana. I have Ghanaian heritage, and I'm thinking she'll probably then claim there's a percentage that she's Ghanaian as well. I'll be like, hang on a minute, you were Maltese, you're also Nigerian,
and
now you're going to say you're Ghanaian and German.
Yeah.
Come on. Thank you very much.
Squeeze it in.
Yeah, let's get them all in. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The People's Channel.
Good morning to you. We're hurtling towards 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 22nd of June. Today, politician of the people, Sir Keir Starmer tells GB News he wouldn't use private health care even if his children were ill.
I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister. My job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
It's a problem that just won't go away. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak refuses to say whether a cabinet minister is actually involved in the Tory gambling scandal, as 4 figures now face investigation.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives pledging to re-energise the nighttime economy. We're going to talk to a Tory representative very shortly.
And a step too far, that's what some are saying after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
The search for missing teenager Jay Slater enters its 6th day in Tenerife as British police say Spanish officers have refused their help.
It's a bit of a dull start for some of us this morning, but generally a fine summer's day today, and many of us will have some sunshine on Sunday as well. And it's warming up. Join me later for a full forecast.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, we've a lot to get through this hour.
There's a lot to get through. It's just rolling and rolling now, isn't it?
It's only going to get busier in the next week and a half. So let's crack on, should we, with the politics, because yesterday our political editor, Christopher Hope, sat down with the man who is hoping to be Prime Minister in a couple of weeks, Sir Keir Starmer.
Now, he was answering the questions that you sent in, so please do keep them coming, because this is just the first of many interviews to come with other party leaders. So in this exclusive interview, Keir Starmer refused 4 times to say that he would pay for private healthcare for his children, even if they badly needed treatment but were stuck on an NHS waiting list.
Meanwhile, after missing out on that Question Time Leaders special, Nigel Farage has taken part in an interview with the BBC. The Reform leader suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO.
And it's produced some headlines today as well. Joining us now, former Conservative Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Secretary George Eustace and GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster. Welcome to you both. Don't know where to start, actually. Do you know where to start? So many things just keep going wrong for the Tories at the moment.
Well, it's been a difficult campaign for us, there's no doubt about that. And the Prime Minister really could have done without these arguments and revelations about, potential bets being placed. And it's a very hard thing for a Prime Minister and a party leader to deal with, because on the one hand, there's an investigation going on, so there's a limit to what you can say. There's a limit to what you can do while that investigation is ongoing, because these are very, very serious allegations. But on the other hand, obviously, he's had to signal very clearly that he's very angry about this, and it's very wrong. So it's a very hard one for Rishi Sunak to handle, to be honest.
Yeah, but it just seems like the nail in the coffin, doesn't it? Because it might not be the Prime Minister's fault directly, it might not be the fault of anyone actually in government, as it were, but nevertheless, it's just a barrage of headlines. It's an open goal for all the opposition parties, and there's very little defence you can make against it.
Well, there's no defence you can make against it, but it's also quite difficult because these are under investigation. There's a Gambling Commission investigation going on, and you also can't really, prejudge that. You have to give people the benefit of some doubt until that has happened. So it's a very tricky one for the Prime Minister to handle. I think he's handled it as well as he can. It's something that's very, very unwelcome, obviously. He's had quite a few, setbacks and blows during this campaign. But, campaigns are like that. I've done 5 of them in my time. They're always difficult. You get things that go wrong on your campaign.
Oh, come on, this is something
it's
different,
been bad.
isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's been difficult. There's been a lot of things that have gone wrong there, for sure. But, all elections are like that, even ones where people win, they have things that go wrong for them during the campaign trail. And we're here now with 2 weeks to go. It's very tough going. You've just got to sort of soldier on and keep going to the finish line, and that's what the party's got to do.
Somebody who knows what it's like in the atmosphere of the battle bus, for instance, is Catherine, because you've been on it just recently. Was it yesterday? I can't keep up with where you've been.
I know, it is like that. Yes, I was in North Wales with the Prime Minister. The Conservatives were launching their manifesto for Wales. I asked in the Q&A after that about this, specifically why he hasn't suspended people for this. And of course, he says there's an ongoing investigation. But, Sir Keir Starmer has said if they were my candidates, they'd be out and their feet wouldn't have touched the ground. And it's very, very difficult. What I really noticed yesterday was so much of the speech, not just from the Prime Minister, but from the Welsh Conservative leader of the Senedd in Wales and the Welsh Secretary. So much of it was basically bashing Labour, their record in Wales, and trying to basically say, look what's going to happen if you give them a blank cheque in England, rather than focusing on their record. But yeah, the atmosphere on the bus, the Prime Minister is still trying his absolute best to be positive and upbeat, and that's always something that struck me. But the last time I was on the bus was 3 weeks earlier, and then there was a real feeling that even though they were 20 points behind, they had a long campaign ahead of them, things might turn around. They were coming out with lots and lots of announcements. It was also the same time that Sir Keir Starmer had a bit of bother with, Diane Abbott, but that didn't really cut through. The thing is, of course, that since then they've had a couple of disasters for them, really. The D-Day, which, yes, Rishi Sunak was there for a long time, did speak to a lot of veterans, has done a lot of work for veterans, but that was all basically lost by the optics of him not being there in the afternoon, and that picture which went round the world of David Cameron with world leaders other than him, and then this betting scandal. And, it does feel now, much as they're not admitting it, that the focus has changed to just trying to minimise the damage.
It's interesting, isn't it, George, in that Labour's coming forward with ideas while the Conservatives are just on the attack, and perhaps that is the best strategy. I don't know. But one of the things Labour's coming out with today, we spoke to Steve Reed in the last hour, is all about the water companies and sewage and our rivers and waterways. I mean, that all fell under your remit when you were Secretary of State. And so they've got a point, haven't they, when they say, well, we'll do something about it, because the Tories didn't.
They haven't got a point at all, because actually the real problems with water came when the Labour government under Tony Blair gave them indefinite licences to operate. Conservatives had privatised them with 25-year licences. Tony Blair changed that, and that was a mistake. And also, under that time, they allowed private equity companies to take these companies off the stock exchange in a way that probably was done badly. So what I did when I came in was, first of all, increase the monitoring. There's 15,000 of these storm overflows. Under Labour, only 600 were monitored. We've made it all 15,000. We therefore discovered the scale of the problem. Now, some people are blaming us for discovering the problem, but that's all we've done. We've discovered it. And then we put in place a £56 billion plan to put it right. So everything that can be done to solve the problems of water quality has been done, and actually was done 2 years ago before it even became a story.
So what are these special measures going to do that Labour's talking about, which is you could mean sort of prison, criminal charges against bosses and all the rest of it?
Nothing. The Labour have to find something to say, but everything that they're talking about, the powers already exist with Ofwat. They have powers to make provisions on bonuses. They have powers to cap, dividends. The powers are there that Ofwat have. They have been using them. The Environment Agency's actually brought thousands of prosecutions in the last few years. That happened under my watch. So everything that could be done has already been done.
Yeah, and yet we still see sewage pouring into the sea.
Yes, because it takes time to do a £56 billion investment to put right, Victorian architecture is what we've got, the sort of sewage infrastructures from the Victorian era. To put that right will take 5 years to make decent progress.
Yeah, but you were in power for 14 years.
Yes, and what we did during that was, for instance, the Thames Tideway Tunnel. We commissioned that. That's been built throughout the time and is about to open, and that will solve all of the problems in the Thames that people have heard about. So it's actually completely false to say that this government hasn't done it. We've identified the problem and addressed it. And what Labour are talking about is just dancing around the fringes, pretending they're going to do something because they know it's a political hot potato. But there's nothing more that they can do, because everything that could have been done and should have been done has already been done by this government.
I'm sorry, these fat cats at the top of the water companies are paying themselves enormous bonuses, running up to £100 million over the last 10 years or so. I mean, it's not good enough, is it? And if you're saying everything that can be done has been done, then, what for the future for us? Never mind what government's in charge.
Most of those water company chief executives have foregone all of their bonuses in recent years. You can look, for instance, at South West Water, where they've foregone those bonuses, and all the executive team have for several years. They don't always get credit for it because people are still angry, and they understand that. But that is happening, and Ofwat are also addressing this. But there's another problem here. If we want to turn this problem around and make this big investment, you do need, the water companies to work with us on this and to get it right, and they do need to be well managed.
Maybe they need to be nationalised.
I don't think they should be nationalised. No, look, we have invested, and it's always very difficult when there are still problems with water quality. But there has actually been a lot of investment and a lot of improvements over the last 20 or 30 years. We have actually got the best drinking water in Europe. We do, yes, still have some incidents occasionally, but it's the best quality in Europe, and our water quality is better than most other European countries.
OK. Look, thank you both. Catch up with you both a little bit later on. We've got right old grilling there, George. Quite right, too. As you know, we have... and it happens across all channels, of course, what we call the rounds, and that's when the government and the opposition parties and things, it happens whether there's an election or not, and they put up people to talk to. Today, for the Conservatives, we have David Simmons, who joins us now. Very good to see you this morning. Can I ask, and I mean absolutely no disrespect for this, but you're not a name most people will know, and I don't think you've held a government position, have you? Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm just wondering why the party has put someone like you up to do the media rounds this morning.
Well, good morning. We're a team, and clearly one of the things we want to show is that backbench Conservative MPs like me are working very hard in our constituencies, and that we're full of campaigning spirit. We've got a positive agenda. That is absolutely the case. I talk to colleagues around the country, and despite some of the doom and gloom that gets reported, that positive agenda is cutting through. And as George just described, on issues like sewage, where Labour are trying to fight a negative campaign, we can point to our excellent track record. I voted for the toughest ever measures we've had in this country to address that issue. Where Labour are in power in Wales, where the Labour government owns the water company, the levels of pollution going into the rivers are double what they are under the Conservatives in England. And as we're seeing those kind of messages cut through, I think we feel positive and optimistic, and we all want to get out and talk about it.
Don't you think ordinary people, that is voters, are fed up hearing politicians saying we've spent X amount of money on it, more money than any other government has ever done, and things are improving, when clearly they're not, particularly if you're in, for instance, Bournemouth at the moment and you want to go swimming in the sea today. There's raw sewage being pumped out there. I know my family live in Bournemouth, and we see it when we go jogging out or walking the dog in the morning. We're just fed up with politicians telling us one thing when plainly something else is happening.
Well, spending money isn't always the solution to a problem, and those of us who've been in politics for a while know that it's the way you do things that's often as important, and that's where the Conservatives do have a good track record, as George described, by introducing monitoring, which didn't exist at all, except I think 7% of sewage outfalls under the last Labour government. We now know the scale of the problem by mandating the water companies that they have to deal with this with unlimited fines. New legislation that's only come in under the Conservatives that I voted for. There are now effective remedies in place, and we can see that over the years that we've been working on this issue, that water quality is improving, and it's one of many things. If we look at things like the economy, youth unemployment is half what it was under the last Labour government. There are 4 million more people in work than we inherited from Labour. That's transformed people's standards of living, their health, their well-being, their mental health and well-being. And it's the agenda that says, look, this is what we can show that we've done. This is the positive difference that it's made. And this is how we're going to take those positive differences based on that track record to deliver in the next Parliament.
But I mean, forgive me, this is the problem. I mean, you've outlined perfectly the problem that the Conservatives are facing in this election, because yeah, all right, there may have been a lot of investment, there may have been a lot of improvements to things. What we know is a lot of these things take a long time to kick in. And the reality is that for most people up and down the country, what you're finding now is, well, you know, your bills have gone up, your quality of health service has gone down, you can't get to see an NHS dentist. And so, you know, whatever has been done, whatever your track record is, it's not reached a point where people are seeing a positive difference in their lives.
Well, we can point to those positive differences. And if you look at things like NHS waiting lists, there are more people languishing on long-term waiting lists. And one of my relatives is one of them under Labour in Wales, a nation of 3 million people, than there are in the whole of England where the Conservatives are in power. If we look at places where Labour are in power, like in London, in Birmingham, in Wales, we've seen service cuts, we've seen a strong anti-motorist agenda, we've seen massive increases in taxes. And we're asking the question, given the choice that we're going to have at this election, it's either Rishi Sunak in Downing Street or it's Keir Starmer in Downing Street. Do you want to let Labour do to the whole of the United Kingdom what they've done to Birmingham, what they've done to motorists in London, what they've done to the NHS in Wales? And you can compare that with a Conservative track record, and it's absolutely clear. Not everything is perfect. We've had a COVID pandemic. We've had the effects of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the appalling things that Putin has been up to in that country that's one of our stoutest allies. And we need to make sure that as we move away from the impact that's had on our economy, that the benefits it brings to our people are spread widely.
When you're out canvassing, what's the mood like on the doorstep? Does anyone, in fact, ever open the door to you anymore or engage you?
Well, people are incredibly friendly. I'm about in my constituency all the time, and I've been there as a local councillor for nearly 24 years. So I've always managed to find that voters are really positive and friendly. And generally speaking, I think there's a sense of frustration with politics. There's been a lot of negativity about the state of the country, and it reflects the fact that pretty much the whole of the Western world is facing a lot of economic challenges. The rising interest rates driving up household costs because of Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the impact that that's had. The rising energy prices, again, is an impact of that. And of course, the borrowing costs from the COVID pandemic. But as we look to the future, we can see the fact that 4 million more people in work earning their own living. This is a nation that's beginning to earn its living in the world again. We're the #1 destination for investment in Europe, second only to the United States for tech investment in the world. All this means good quality jobs, opportunities. The fact that youth unemployment's half what it was means many more more of our young people see a bright long-term future ahead of them. We want to make sure that that is our positive message at this election. And then when voters come to make that choice, they know what they're getting with the Conservatives. They also know that the Labour Party have set out millions and millions of pounds of extra spending, no real clarity. It amounts to £2,000 extra per household. If they don't get that through direct taxes on households, it's going to come from things like fuel duty, capital gains tax, inheritance tax, all of which are going to hit ordinary working people, alongside things like paper mile and a national ULEZ type of scheme based on what they're already doing in places like London and Birmingham. So we've got a really positive choice with the Conservatives, and clearly a lot of questions people are asking about whether Labour, who've tried to be quiet about what they're doing, just try and become the default choice in this election, whether they really could deliver for the British people.
I tell you what, if anyone does open the door to you, they'd be lucky to get a word in edgeways. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. David Simmons there.
We mentioned
his constituency.
So he's standing in Ruislip, Northwood and Pinner. And so these are the candidates for you. Tony Gill for the Labour Party, David Simmons, as you saw, for the Conservative Party, Jonathan Michael Banks for the Lib Dems, Ian Price for Reform UK and Jess Lee for the Green Party.
Right, what time is it? 8:17. Shall we go to the weather now? It's going to be a good one.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just one or two pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England, but for most it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of one or two showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yeah, we're having a barbecue tonight.
Oh, nice.
Well, this evening. So hopefully the weather does stay nice for that.
I think it's going to, yeah, unless you want to swim in the sea, of course.
Yes.
Which
I tell you what,
horrible.
I could have done with that pizza oven that we gave away in our Great British giveaway a couple of months ago.
Yeah, you hinted enough about that.
That would have been very nice. Anyway,
hint.
We have a new giveaway, as you know, and it's your chance to win more than £16,000 worth of prizes. It's 15 grand in cash, whole load of summer treats. But of course, you've got to be in it to win it. So here are the details.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, best of luck to you. Now, still to come, the hunt for the missing teenager Jay Slater enters its 6th day. And we're going to talk to someone on Tenerife very shortly.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 years ago, the small town of Evanston proudly became the first local government in the... It's just outside Chicago, by the way. The first local government in the US to start paying slavery reparations to its black citizens. But now the council is being sued in a federal court for exhibiting exactly the sort of prejudice it decries. By saying, well, basically, you know, the Hispanics, the white people, they are being discriminated against because they're not getting anything.
The people that were compensated were people that were adults between 1919 and 1969. Now, they lived under a time, in terms of education, in terms of the job market, they were literally barred from having certain jobs, going to certain healthcare clinics and going to certain schools. So that is a set of very distinct challenges that white people, Hispanic people, Asian people did not face. So that is precisely why they've been compensated in this way. And I think it's about £20,000 it works out to. I would have given him a lot more.
But you see, the thing is, history, we learn from history and we move on, and people evolve. And in order to reach a certain goal and a certain level of parity, which is what we all want to do, and through no way of levelling up, and this is a form of levelling up, by the way, it's nothing else, and it's divisive and it's patronising, I think it's absolutely disgusting. There were people in modern history who were discriminated against constantly, and I think it's so divisive to keep going back, to keep reiterating, to keep saying, oh, poor you. Between 1919 and 1969, you couldn't get a mortgage. Well, that was wrong. No one's saying it was right. But do we need to be compensated for that?
The legal challenge is saying that this is creating more divisions.
Yes.
The past is affecting the present, but not in a good way.
The People's Channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party. The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Hi there, it's 25 minutes past 8. Now, the search for the missing British teenager Jay Slater has entered its 6th day now in Tenerife.
Well, police on the island say the search is going to focus on a rural village and a valley after the 19-year-old went missing on what was his first holiday ever without his parents.
Joining us now, travel writer and owner of myguidetenerife.com, Joe Corley. A very good morning to you, Joe. It's incredible, isn't it? Suddenly the world's media is focused on your island. What sort of effect is it having on local people? Because it must be so frustrating, bewildering, that we still haven't found this young man.
Yeah, unfortunately, after I think it's 6 days now, there's still no finding, still no sighting of Jay. All the locals here, they're very kind of invested, and they're trying to help as much as possible. There's bars that are offering free food. There's people that are offering to join the search. Car hire companies that are offering cars for people that want to go and help with the search. It has affected the local population quite a lot.
What do we know about this rural village now that the search is focused on?
Yeah, I mean, Masca is one of the prettiest villages in Tenerife, but it's very remote. It's only accessible via an extreme switchback road. It's kind of clings to the side of the Tino Mountains, which is a vast area scarred by lots of ravines and cliffs. I think Masca itself is about 1,000 meters above sea level. Difficult to access. You need a car to get there. There are trails that do crisscross the area, but again, it's very barren. It's full of cacti, rocks, fallen rocks. It's difficult for even the most adept hikers, but for someone like Jay, who's not used to the area, it's got to be a nightmare. Complete wilderness.
And of course, yeah, we think that we're looking now at pictures of the sort of people out actually looking through the undergrowth. We've seen helicopters and drones looking for Jay. But the problem is, I guess, if he did at any point succumb to the heat, he would have looked for shade, which would make him even more difficult to find.
That's exactly what he would have done, yeah. And there is a lot of shade in that area because of the tall cliffs. There are also natural caves, huge boulders. So the shade is everywhere. I mean, there's so many pockets to yet be searched. It's not like they've scoured the area, couldn't find, and going back looking again. They have to do this in a very slow, methodical way because of, like you said, there's so many places that you'd take shelter, basically.
And, I mean, this is the problem, though, because obviously the clock is ticking.
Yeah, it's been a while now. And, when that phone call, the last phone call that anybody had, I think it was Lucy, his friend, that received, he said he was thirsty then. Jay had also been to a party the night before, so he'd be probably dehydrated from that already. He said that he needed water. Difficult. There's no fresh water there or no streams. I don't know, 19-year-old, maybe he would head to the ocean. Not that he could drink the water there, but just drawn to water, I guess. There's a lot of speculation going on. Some of it is crazy. Some of it is, it's just people wanting to help in some way.
What is the feeling, or is there any feeling towards the police on this? Because we have heard that British police have offered their help and have been rejected, really. But, I mean, clearly the police on the island think that they can manage. Is that the way ordinary people feel?
I think in all these kind of cases, and especially from the family, nothing is going to be enough until Jay is found. Even if the British police came over and still Jay was not found, it would still not be enough. It's just a natural feeling, especially from the mother. The Spanish police are perfectly capable. They're using expert mountain rescue teams that know this area inside out. These are the best people to be on this case, I would imagine.
OK. Joe, good to talk to you. We'll talk again, no doubt. Thanks very much indeed. It's so thoroughly upsetting, actually.
When you see the terrain, you realise how difficult it would be to find anyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You look at that and it's not easy terrain.
And ultimately, there's still the mystery, isn't there, of why he went off the way he did. Did he really think he could trudge 11 miles back to base?
But what do you do when
11 hours, sorry, wasn't it, back to base?
I mean, it's crazy, but you're talking about a teenager who was probably, a bit drunk and all the rest of it. And,
possibly dehydrated because he had very little water and no energy on his phone.
Anyway, you'd never give up hope, do you? His mother certainly won't be giving up hope. I don't say his parents, because I've not heard anything about his father, but his mother's been quite vocal, understandably, quite rightly so. So they're not going to give up hope, and neither will we. So keep your fingers crossed.
OK, at 8:30, we're going to take a quick break. Still to come, we've got all the latest sport with Aidan McGee.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually. And, oh, no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you, even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a Trouble Muncher for their kids? What have you got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in, or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these Trouble Munchers in every classroom in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Aidan McGee is here at 8:34. Morning, Aidan.
Good morning to you both. Good to see you.
Right, let's talk VAR, because it's been working quite well at the Euros. We haven't seen that much of it, which has been quite nice.
It was always suggested that it was working better around Europe, but I just thought maybe we just don't see as much of a spotlight over those leagues. It's not as newsworthy over here, so maybe that's why we don't hear about as much about it. But I have to say, there haven't been much. I mean, it's only a week old, I would say, but when we do see a VAR intervention that's controversial, lo and behold, it has to involve two Premier League officials, and that's what we saw last night.
So while we weren't playing, we were in charge of the VAR.
We were indeed, yeah, we were indeed. And so, look, we were really looking forward to the match last night, France against Holland, 8 o'clock, the big Friday night match that we were really anticipating eagerly. And then it didn't live up to much, and so I suppose that's a disappointment for the VAR officials. They thought, well, if there's much more going, if there are other things going on in the game, maybe we would have avoided the spotlight on ourselves. But quite late on in the game, Holland scored a goal. It looked like quite a decent goal. It was heading towards the net. The goalkeeper was claiming that he wasn't able to dive because Denzel Dumfries, the Holland player, should be playing for Scotland with a name like that, actually. But he was next to the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper claimed he couldn't dive to his left. He was in an offside position, the player. And so the goal wasn't given because the goalkeeper was judged to be impeded. Now, the problem is, Anne, they took 6 minutes to arrive at this conclusion.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It is.
It doesn't even seem to be the right decision.
Well, I just think, I don't know what you think, but I think if you're looking at a situation, it takes you 6 minutes to decide whether it's not a goal or a goal. It looks like they're finding reasons to disallow a goal, and
what
it does
do they
nothing.
do while they're waiting the 6 minutes? Do they just stroll around the pitch? Or
yeah, and it's actually been... That's a good point there, actually, because it's been studied in the last year or so that the increase in soft tissue injuries is as a result of players standing around waiting. Don't forget, they're going from whatever they're travelling at, 100 miles an hour, not quite that quick, but, metaphorically, to stop. And players are having to warm up, and it's causing an increase in hamstring injuries. That has been proven over halfway.
And what about the crowd? It must drive them mad.
Well, yeah, I was sitting in a game last season, and we had about 4 or 5 VAR interventions. Everyone at home thought it was a Premier League classic. I'm sitting there in the stand at Tottenham. Someone else is next to me asking me where I'm going on my holiday because we're bored. We're sitting there for minutes on end.
Yeah.
And then when the result comes back, like it did?
Yeah, well, we can't see. The difference is that we can't sit in the stadium. You can't see what the VAR officials are looking at. You can't. Whereas if you're watching on TV, you can at least see. The studio will at least provide replays of what you can see or where the point of contention is. In the stadium, you've got nothing. You've got nothing of the sort. And don't forget, in that stadium last night, there would have been probably about 50,000 people. I would have thought. So it doesn't make for a good spectacle for a start, and it just seems that the Premier League officials can't seem to cover themselves in glory when it comes to this situation.
Depressing.
It is, and actually I think they got the decision wrong.
Yeah, after all that, they got it wrong.
It doesn't look good. Ooh,
yeah,
I'm falling off my chair.
Mind you, can we talk about Scotland? Because if they're going to make history, they're going to have to beat Hungary, aren't they?
They are indeed. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock in Stuttgart. Probably the biggest game for a generation for Scotland, I would imagine, and what a difference a few days makes. We touched on it on Thursday, didn't we, Stephen? After they got the draw against Switzerland and having lost 5-1 against Germany, they were in a really bad place. I would argue now that they're in a better place in terms of their mood and how upbeat they are than England are right now. And so they've given themselves a fighting chance. If they win tomorrow, it's a tough ask, even though Hungary have lost both their games. They have played Switzerland and Germany, so very, very difficult fixtures. But if they win tomorrow, I think they will go through as one of the 4 best third-place teams, and no team on 4 points has ever failed to advance. You'd be very unlucky if you finished on 4 points and didn't go through to the next round. No Scotland side in the history of the national team has ever done it, and that includes sides with Archie Gemmill, with Kenny Dalglish, Alan Hansen, Graham Souness, etc. They've never got past the group stage. It's almost a bit of a national lampoon that they haven't managed to do it, and they could do it tomorrow night. And with all the downbeat and all the downbeat feelings coming out of the camp last week after that defeat, it would be a hell of a turnaround in just 1 week.
Yeah, it'd be great.
It would, yeah.
Can we very briefly mention the Rob Burrows tribute?
Yes, that's right. Well, he died early this month from motor neurone disease. Yesterday was Global Motor Neurone Disease Awareness Day. And Leeds Rhinos marked the occasion. They were playing against Lee Leopards at Headingley, 18,000 fans.
It was their first game since he died, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. And so they did a few different things. They had a minute's silence beforehand. They had a minute's silence in the 7th minute because that was the number on the back of his shirt. The fans formed an RB7 mosaic in the crowd, which looked very fetching. And there were video tributes before and afters. There was a guard of honour, which featured his wife and children. Teammates from all over the world, ones he'd played with previously, came over from as far as Australia to pay tribute to him. Leeds Rhinos won the game 18-10, but a fitting way to say goodbye to an absolute legend, it has to be said.
Yeah, and I think the great thing is, because of the warmth towards him, he knew he was loved before he died.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't just the case of the tribute after he'd died.
No, that's nice, actually. Right, Aidan, thank you. We'll see you later on. Still to come, we'll take you through the papers with Stephanie Tetchy and Kevin Schofield.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
I cried, cracking out before we even start. I mean, to see King Charles be so brave, so strong, and you can sometimes, I think, gets his stomach hurt, or he just moved himself. It didn't seem very comfortable, but he was there and he was going to go through it all. And I just thought, he's the most wonderful man. He cares more about us and the people who are there serving him. An extra bonus is Princess Catherine, who looked absolutely stunning. She did look very, very slim, though, but she looked beautiful in that outfit. Little Charlotte is an extraordinary child. When they were coming back, she was wiping the windows so that everyone could see with her hand, getting rid of the rain. She's fantastic. And the other thing that actually got my heart was that Prince Prince William and Princess Anne and Prince Edward were getting completely drenched. They were on their horses. They had to go back after the festivities were over. And I thought we're jolly lucky in this country to have a royal family who will put themselves out like that and really do their very best for the nation. No, nobody ever does, and that's why our royal family is the one that's most popular. And I do have to say, and just a couple of words, that Meghan introduced some raspberry jam and some dog's biscuits just an hour before. Don't laugh.
Don't make me laugh.
Hour before. I mean, can you imagine that? The desire to be noticed. It's always just before a big event because she wants the attention. I don't think she works it out that other people would do it. I think she works it out that they'll all look at me.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel. I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
8:42, morning to you. Let's have a look at some of the front pages for you today.
Well, The Guardian leads with news that Russian hackers managed to access and steal an eye-watering 300 million NHS patient records.
The Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, is on the front of the Telegraph this morning with her prediction that Keir Starmer will reverse Brexit.
Nigel Farage's BBC interview leads the Mail after he sensationally claimed that the West provoked Russia to invade Ukraine.
In the Times, J.K. Rowling has accused the Labour Party of turning its back on women.
And the I newspaper leads with the National Trust calling on UK political parties to sign a pledge to protect rivers from illegal sewage dumping.
All right, with their keen-eyed selection, political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci are here. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Kevin, let's start with the Times, should we? On page 8.
On page 8, yeah.
And what James Cleverly, Home Secretary, is saying.
Yeah, there's got a good interview with James Cleverly, and the main takeaway is him saying that the Conservatives cannot let Nigel Farage into the party. Now, there's a split in the party here, and Suella Braverman, Liz Truss have both said, absolutely, get him on board. Rishi Sunak has been asked about it. We just won't go there. Sort of skirts around it, doesn't say what he really thinks. But James Cleverly absolutely nailing his colours to the mast, saying, look, this guy wants to destroy the Conservative Party. He said it before, and he uses a football analogy. He says it's like someone saying, I want to take over Arsenal, I want to destroy Arsenal, rip down the Emirates Stadium, oh, and by the way, will you let me play for Arsenal? He goes, why would you let anyone in whose stated aim is to destroy the party?
But he's not said he wants to.
Well, he's talked about, I think the aim is that reform, including Nigel Farage, get a few MPs elected. The Tories are wiped out virtually. Obviously still have more MPs than reform. And then once he's in Parliament, he can then work his way to take over the Conservative Party. A sort of reverse takeover, and then become the leader. And then he said himself at the next election...
It wouldn't be the Conservative Party, would it?
It would probably still be the Conservative Party brand, you would think. But to all intents and purposes, it would be a very different party. Certainly if Nigel Farage was leading it, it would be an incredibly different party. So James Cleverly is setting his stall out. Now, assuming James Cleverly gets re-elected, he's got a 25,000 majority, so you've got to think he probably will be. It sets up a very interesting post-election
well, we don't know how they're going
politics.
to feel after the election, do we?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they may be decimated. And also the ones that are left may feel very differently after a defeat. Not that we're prejudging the election.
Just going by the opinion polls. But they could be wrong. So.
I think Nigel has a good thing with reform. I think it'll be more hassle for him to try and save the Conservatives, where they're literally on their knees at the moment because of all the damage they've caused to their reputation with the public. So, you know, it must be flattering to Nigel that they're looking at him as a saving grace. But I think he's launched this new avenue with reform, and the public, as it's shown in the polls, they are starting to turn more to reform rather than the Conservatives.
Yeah,
if they push him into third place, it would be absolutely astonishing. I'd be surprised still, but you just don't know.
No, never
suggesting.
Never say never.
Never say no.
Not with British politics, anyway.
No, not at the minute. Right, what should we have next?
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, what's this about Trevor McDonald?
Yeah.
Caught my eye.
Trevor McDonald. It was the career that never happened for him at the BBC. He's done an interview with Saga magazine, and he said the reason why he picked ITN rather than BBC because he felt like the BBC approached him as a tick boxing exercise, because actually he said a producer approached him at the time where they said, we've come under so much pressure for race relations and we need to hire a black reporter, and he said that made him turn down a potential career with the BBC and said go to ITN, where he felt like he was being employed on merit. And I just thought it was quite an interesting thing, because I know a lot of black creatives and a lot of black employees in different industries at the moment where there's such a big thing for diversity. You always do question yourself, am I being hired just because I'm black or because of the merit of my work? So I just found it quite an interesting story that it was happening then, and it's still happening now, because it's great that there's such a big push for diversity in all fields. But I guess when you're an ethnic minority, you don't want to feel like, oh, I'm just there to fill a space. You know, I want to be there because of my skills and the hard work I've done. So it's quite an issue that a lot of ethnic minorities still face today.
I mean, it's happened all over. I mean, in my day, it was you were the token girl reporter. I mean, for many years, I was the only girl reporter in a newsroom, including television. And so it happens, but it's moved on, clearly.
It has, definitely.
I mean, there's so many females in television news at the moment.
Well, I'd say in sport.
Yes, in sport.
That's the thing now.
I remember the first time Match of the Day had a female commentator, and you would have thought the world was ending. It was such a controversy. And now you don't even give it a second thought. You know, there's female pundits alongside men and female commentators. You just don't even think about it.
No, well, that's the way of it all. There's a lot of things in life we get our knickers in a twist over, but when push comes to shove, it just people just forget about it.
Have we got a black Doctor Who now?
Yes, we have.
There you go. See, I haven't seen it for ages.
Clive Myrie is going to be doing the BBC's general election coverage. You know, and he's news.
No, I haven't watched any of the new Doctor. I'm saving till the whole thing is over, and then I'll have a binge.
I don't know how you're going to feel about it, actually.
You're not so impressed?
I like it, but I do feel like they've pushed the storylines a bit too far. I think it's moving away from what traditional Doctor Who fans like it to be, where now it has become a bit of a tick boxing exercise. And then we did have the first gay kiss on it 2 weeks ago, and again, you don't know if it's, you know, if there's any scenes of sexuality on Doctor Who, you do think, oh, is it taken away where this Doctor's supposed to be asexual? So.
Oh well, yeah, but there has been a bit of that before with Billy Piper and David Tennant and all that sort of thing. So.
Okay.
I haven't watched it since Tom Baker.
Yeah.
He wasn't sexualised, I don't think.
No,
if he was, it went over my head
well,
at that
couldn't
age.
get his scarf off, that's why.
Tom was, you couldn't be on a television news programme with green fingernails like that. Look.
Yeah, I know. Glam.
Times have moved on.
When we're talking about sport, Kevin, what's the Times got about Three Lions?
Yeah, so the Wags, you'll remember in the 2006 World Cup there was huge controversy because of what's her name? Wayne Rooney's wife, Colleen. Abby Clancy, Victoria Beckham, and they sort of took over, was it Gelsenkirchen, I think it was, and they were there all the time and they were too much of a distraction and they were blamed because England got knocked out. Anyway, it's much different now. So they got a very short 6 hours they were allowed with their partners and husbands, after the Denmark game the other day there. So
do you have a good telling off?
Well, exactly. So they were able to send some quality time, but it's quite interesting because it talks about Kyle Walker.
Yeah,
well, he's had his wife and girlfriend.
Well, quite, yes. He's watched by both his wife and his ex-lover, who were, they obviously they don't get on, as you can quite imagine. But yeah, slightly awkward.
Well, I was going to say, wouldn't that put you off your game?
Well, I
you would think so.
Well, it hasn't put him off his game so far.
But I feel sorry for the child because he's refusing, even though he's paying child benefit each month for him plus more, he refused to acknowledge his love child. So
but he's got two with this lady.
He's got two. So she's brought the son to the game wearing the T-shirt saying "Daddy," but Daddy refuses to acknowledge you. So I think it's really it's more traumatising for this little boy one day when he does realise actually his father's family and son were right in front row where she had them shoved in the back. You know, I think it'll be quite traumatising.
Yes, but
for
then
him.
why is she? If that's traumatising, why is she taking it?
Yeah, well, to get
making
in front of the papers. Yeah.
Oh, I tell you what, I wouldn't want that sort of lifestyle.
Even more drama off the one.
That'd be even great.
Could not be exactly. I'm bad enough. Too much drama. Too much drama for me.
Too much drama. I tell you what, you were saying to me earlier on, you saw a clip the other day of us two doing together in 2017.
Yeah.
And we both had dark hair.
I know, that's how long ago it was.
Oh,
I know, you can't
really
even imagine that.
Yeah.
Can you? Yeah. It was.
It
wasn't even that long, 7 or 8 years ago. I was a much younger man then.
We've aged.
Too much stress.
It does, doesn't it? What have we got next? We've got the Wags. We've got what about Codzilla?
Oh yes, great.
Tell us about Codzilla.
Yeah, so this is this fella who caught a cod which was 5'2" inches long.
What's going on?
I mean, that's nearly as tall as me. And that's actually
a
lot of strands of
and it really was a cod. I thought it was just a good headline, but it really is a cod.
Absolutely, a
And
cod.
it is the size of Kevin.
That is absolutely. That is gigantic.
You'd need a lot of chips for that.
That is, you need to be
180.
hungry for that for supper, definitely.
You could feed a few families with that, couldn't you?
I mean, it doesn't look like he put it back. It does look quite...
He put it back?
No, I'm saying that it doesn't look like he did, because quite often now they do, don't they? Anglers, I'm not a fisherman
but he'll be
myself.
wanting... Well, to be fair to him, he's going to want the stuffed.
Yes.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, that is apparently £1 pound lighter than the biggest ever. So he just missed out on the record.
Yeah.
But it took
I
him
had no idea they
20
grew that
minutes
big.
to haul it in, which I thought was quite quick, actually.
It's a size
Yeah.
dolphin, isn't it?
Something like that.
Did he pull it by himself? Did he relay it?
I think he had help. he had help, but yeah.
Stop it.
So there we go.
So naughty.
No, I'm not. All right, before we let you go, just very, very briefly, Steph, Anita Rani.
Yes.
She's hit the papers for wearing the wrong thing.
I know. So
not wearing enough.
Ooh, and your team, Dame Jenny Murray, who basically in her Daily Mail column hit out at Anita Rani saying that if you are going to be a Woman's Hour presenter, you must be known for your feminist views and not trying to attract the attention of men. So Anita Rani at the BAFTA, she wore a really revealing dress, which was on the... There she is.
Oh, to be fair, she looks fabulous.
I think she looks fabulous as well. But she's now come out and said, look, you know what, you can be a feminist and wear revealing outfits and still be smart. Yeah, so it's this issue that a lot of women have where it's like you're going to be judged by what you wear, but people will think you're not intelligent. And isn't that going against the whole feminist rhetoric where actually women can express themselves and still be intelligent? What do you think, Han?
Well, that's how we can't have Anne's views because we've no time. Anyway, it's been good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get a check on the weather for you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just 1 or 2 pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England, but for most it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of 1 or 2 showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters, and it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison.
OK, so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning, Lucy.
So, is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been
Go on.
cancelled.
See ya.
There's the door.
There we
But
go.
yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
Surprised by that.
That women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex? Or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want 3 things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner, we stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
Very good morning to you. It is nearly 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 22nd of June. Today, a very loyal Starmer. The Labour leader tells GB News he would never use private healthcare over the NHS, even if his children were ill.
I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister. My job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Shadow Environment Secretary Steve Reed, who had this to say about NHS waiting lists.
And help us to start to reduce the pressure on our NHS so we can get those massive waiting lists down. I've got people in my constituency who've gone to A&E and been waiting there for 24 hours. That's shocking.
Another PR disaster for the Prime Minister as he refuses to say whether a cabinet minister is involved in the Tory gambling scandal. Earlier we spoke to the Conservative David Simmons.
Look at things like the economy. Youth unemployment is half what it was under the last Labour government. There are 4 million more people in work than we inherited from Labour. That's transformed people's standards of living, their health, their well-being, their mental health and well-being.
And was his comment a step too far? That's what some are saying after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage suggested that the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We've provoked this war. Of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
Also today, the search for the missing teenager Jay Slater enters its 6th day in Tenerife. British police say the Spanish police have refused their help.
Good morning. England boss Gareth Southgate believes fatigue is playing its part in England's sluggish start to the Euros. The Three Lions were enjoying a yoga session yesterday, more on that later. And Andy Murray will undergo back surgery today as he enters a race against time to be fit for Wimbledon.
It's a bit of a dull start for some of us this morning, but generally a fine summer's day today, and many of us will have some sunshine on Sunday as well. And it's warming up. Join me later for a full forecast.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Right, we better crack on with politics because there's just so much to get through today. We haven't got time for huge amounts of chit-chat, have we, today?
No,
this is a shame.
It's the election is rolling on.
Certainly is. Anyway, look, yesterday our political editor, Christopher Hope, sat down with a man who is hoping to be Prime Minister in a couple of weeks, Sir Keir Starmer.
Now, he was answering the questions that you sent in, so please do keep them coming because this is the first of many interviews to come with other party leaders. So, in this exclusive interview, Starmer refused 4 times to say he would pay for private healthcare for his children if they badly needed treatment but were stuck on an NHS waiting list.
Meanwhile, after missing out on the Question Time Leaders special, Nigel Farage took part in an interview with the BBC. The Reform leader suggested that the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO.
Well, joining us now is GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. And a very good morning to you, Tom. Do you think... which battle bus are you on, then? You're on the Lib Dems battle bus. Jolly good. I just wonder what you think of Nigel Farage's statements about Putin and Russia and the way it's being reported today. Do you think he will come to regret saying that at all?
Yes, it does seem like it was perhaps the first misstep from Nigel Farage in this general election campaign. Of course, we know how much the country as a whole thinks that Putin is to blame for the war in Ukraine, and we know how much support there has been for the Ukrainian cause. And to some extent, Nigel Farage there setting himself apart at odds with that mainstream of opinion here in the United Kingdom. It'll be interesting to see if he does start to row back from that position, but he did seem pretty steadfast in what he believes, that the idea defensive union is an aggressive idea. The idea that Vladimir Putin is
apologies.
These battle buses, it's a real nuisance, isn't it? But it's fun to see them actually doing the rounds, but sometimes the signal just falls out. We'll see if we can get back to him at some point.
I'll tell you what is interesting about that, and loads of you who are supporting reform and all of this say, oh, well, he said the right thing. It's because it's quite nuanced. To be fair to Nigel Farage, he did say it was provoked, but did say it was Putin's fault. He wasn't trying to sort of remove the blame from Putin. Wasn't from his perspective being an apologist.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you're supporting Nigel Farage and Reform UK now, he doesn't need to convince you, does he? The problem he's got is trying to convince those people who are perhaps wavering Conservatives who may be really put off by those comments. So that's the problem. It's always the people on the edges and not the people who are already sort of very strongly supporting you.
Well, we've got with us in the studio, we've got George Eustice, who's the former Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Do you think these campaigns are too long and that inevitably somebody under a lot of pressure, any of the leaders, for instance, under a lot of pressure, will say something that they do come to regret, just because they're human beings and they're under pressure?
Yes, I mean, look, the campaign is not much longer than normal. They're always sort of 5 weeks, often 6 weeks. This one's slightly longer, but it's 6 weeks, obviously. But, you know, campaigns are gruelling. I've run some of them. I've been an advisor to opposition leaders in them. They're exhausting for everyone, and, yeah, people make mistakes. But this was, I have to say, quite a terrible blunder by Nigel Farage. It's the kind of thing you'd expect George Galloway to say, frankly. And last week he was saying he aspires to be a kind of leader of the opposition. But, you know, with that role of leader of the opposition, if that's what he wanted to be, there would come certain, you know, responsibilities. And, you know, we have a long convention in this country that the leader of the opposition is given access to certain things like intelligence briefings, but they show a degree of solidarity with the country on matters of defence and foreign affairs.
Yeah, but
this was a terrible, thing to say, and also wrong.
But to be fair to him, there are a lot of analysts, Russian analysts, who say, yeah, you can't look at what is going on without seeing the actions of the West as being, whether right or wrong, whether NATO should have been expanded or not, but saying, well, that it was clearly going to poke the bear. It was going to upset Putin, and therefore there will be consequences. It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
No, I think well, he's not wrong that that's the Russian excuse for what they've done. Yes, but I don't think he needed to give airtime to that. The reality here is that after, you know, the breakup, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War, there was an agreement called the Budapest Memorandum, and Britain, America, and Russia all signed to that. And what we said to the Ukraine is, we want you to get rid of your nuclear weapons. We don't think Ukraine should have nuclear weapons, but we'll all give you a guarantee that your sovereignty is going to be respected. Now, Russia violated that a decade ago when it invaded Crimea and annexed Crimea, and we didn't do enough. And to be fair, even then, the West, because they didn't want an escalation and because they were trying to accommodate Russia, even though it was behaving terribly, France and Germany brokered another agreement, the Minsk Agreement, that basically said we would, seek some kind of independent self-determination for those southeastern territories. Now, you know, there was an attempt to try to get Russia to be part of the international community, and I'm afraid, you know, he then just did a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So it's absolutely wrong to say that the West was insensitive to, the Russian perspective on these things. Quite the opposite. We actually persuaded Ukraine to give up its nuclear weapons, and we, all of us, including Russia, gave them a guarantee that their sovereignty would be respected, and Russia and Putin has now absolutely violated that.
Do you worry, actually, that attitudes are going to change, particularly maybe if we get another American president in Donald Trump, that there will be this aspect that not only do you have to try and understand your enemy, but go and make friends with him?
Yeah, but we've always done that. And, you know, the truth is, after the end of the Cold War, to be fair, there was quite an attempt by the West, you know, even under Tony Blair's government, quite an attempt, despite reservations about Putin and what he would be like, to try to engage Russia, to make them part of the international community, to say, look, we can all work together on global challenges as friends. We haven't got to be rivals. And, you know, bit by bit, year by year, you know, Putin has returned to his KGB roots and taken Russia further away from that, you know, that hope and that dream that there was at the end of the Cold War. And it's incredibly sad, incredibly disappointing, but we cannot ignore that. We can't be blind to that. And we can't have Nigel Farage effectively pretending that, Russia didn't invade Crimea a decade ago, and basically just giving airtime to the excuses they give for having done so.
All right, let's have a look at the Tories then in all of this. I mean, what a campaign it has been for the Tories. I mean, even people I know within the party have said this has just been a disaster from the very first announcement on the steps of Downing Street right through to last night, and not talking about whether or not there is a cabinet minister involved in this betting scandal. I mean, the whole thing has been, from insiders have said, it's a disaster, it's not worked, there's no enthusiasm, there's no thought at all that we can actually win in all of this. We're just pretending for the British public.
Well, I think it's incredibly difficult for the Conservative Party because we've tried lots of things over the last 18 months to try to reconnect with people, to win people's trust back. Rishi Sunak's tried a lot of things since he's become Prime Minister to try to do that, and it's been tough going. Those polls have remained stubbornly where they are, with Labour with a stubborn 20-point lead. And it's very hard going into a general election campaign when you're the underdog, when you're that far behind. Yes, things do go wrong, but, I've fought lots of campaigns and things will go wrong out on the campaign trail. There'll be people saying things they shouldn't have said, revelations as we've had, this week. That kind of thing does happen in an election, and you've just got to, get back in the saddle and keep fighting all the way to the line. So it's a tough one for Rishi Sunak, tough one for the Conservatives in general, but they've just got to keep themselves together and keep fighting all the way to the line. Because, it's one thing to lose, and look, the poll suggests that we will, but there's another thing to lose badly, and every seat will matter to make sure that we can hold, potentially a future Labour government to account. If they have a big majority, they'll be able to do whatever they like, and that won't be pretty.
Oh, I was just going to say, because you said that and the way you phrased it, and now that you're out the game, you're out of government, you're out of politics, you're not restanding or anything else, Labour's going to win, aren't they? Well, I mean, be straight with us. Now you're not a politician.
Well, look, I've been saying all along, we went into this campaign as the underdog. We're 20 points behind in the polls. The polls tend not to be that far adrift. So, yes, look, the projections are obviously that we might lose this, but nothing's inevitable. And my view on campaigns is that you've got to fight for every vote all the way to the line. And that's what I want my party to do. Because
but do you think that rings true with the average voter, or particularly voters who are undecided, that now the Tories seem to have changed their message to vote for us, we'll be the next government, to don't let Keir Starmer have a blank cheque? Is that really going to resonate?
I've got a particular view on the polls that I don't know what the answer is. We've always had polls during elections, and they've always been a big feature of the coverage. But, if you think on election night, you have the exit poll, and there's a very strict rule that you do not publish the results of an exit poll until after polls close, because you don't want to influence the vote. But, here we are throughout the campaign. Every day there's polls, and they're using these seat-specific polls. It's not long ago that the Times got into a bit of trouble for publishing polls based on individual seat predictions, because that was seen to be influencing the election. But that seemed to have gone out the window. And I think there is something not quite right about having quite so many polls, quite so much obsession about it, because you do want the voters ultimately to weigh up who they would like to be governing the country, and not to be thinking, oh, well, this person's going to win anyway, or they're not going to win here.
And you do hear people saying that, don't you?
You do, and the polls, it's not right that polls should influence how they vote. People should vote for who they want to be the governing party, and I think we've got a bit of a problem that the polls have got a bit too much excessive coverage, but I don't know what the answer is. They've always been there. I'm not saying you'd get rid of polls. That would obviously be ridiculous, but I don't understand why we have this division between an exit poll that seems
sacrosanct. I can tell you why. That's very simple, because you can only carry out an exit poll once people have started voting. And of course, when the voting starts in this country from 7 a.m. in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, we do not talk about.
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about it.
I know.
But
we just happen to say, there's an election today. These other polls are giving projections on individual seats, which it could be equally influential on people's intention to vote. So I'm not quite sure. There's a bit of an inconsistency there, is all I'm saying. But I'm not pretending I've got an answer.
And also, people coming out being asked for the exit poll don't always tell the truth about how they voted.
No, I wouldn't. I don't
think I would.
I just refuse
and
to
a lot of people won't do it, although they tend to be reasonably accurate.
Well, they do.
Yes, they have been so far.
The latest one's within about 7.5 seats, so it's very, very accurate. Anyway, we shall wait and see. Really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom this morning at 9:14.
Well, 2 women have been charged with criminal damage after Just Stop Oil activists sprayed orange paint on private jets at Stansted Airport on Thursday. Jennifer Kowalski, who is 28, and Cole MacDonald, who's 22, are alleged to have caused over £5,000 worth of damage. The pair are due to appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court later today.
The wife of Dr. Michael Mosley, Claire Bailey, has paid tribute to her husband in her first Instagram post since his death a couple of weeks ago at 67. He went missing on the Greek island of Symi on June the 5th. He was found dead several days later. He'd been out walking in 40-degree heat. Dr. Bailey has promised to carry on her husband's legacy and continue his work.
And Taylor Swift has kicked off the London leg of her Eras tour with the first of 3 sold-out shows at Wembley Stadium. Fans descended on the capital in their masses, with attendees including everyone from Sir Keir Starmer to the Prince of Wales and his 3 young children. Tonight, another 90,000 fans will make the same journey.
It might be because I'm older now, but I just cannot get my head round Taylor Swift and the Eras tour and just how passionate people are about how she is this sensation, this everyone's talking about. See, like Michael Jackson was back in the day, I guess, but...
Yeah?
I don't know, it's just... I mean, I think she's all right.
Me
Seems
too.
a nice tune.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know if I bumped into her unless she was wearing one of her amazing outfits, and then you might think, who's that? But the nice thing, though, is when they go out interviewing all the fans, everything seems to be positive and happy.
Yeah, but she does a lot of these songs about her exes and things, doesn't she?
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't want to be a
But she is a phenomenon because wherever she goes, she changes the economic climate.
300 million quid to the London economy, do you reckon, over this couple of days?
Which is why we welcome people like her, I suppose.
Why not? That's just people buying pink outfits and cowboy boots and pink cowboy hats, which is what they're all wearing.
But it's the restaurants and it's everything that surrounds an enormous venue like that.
Because you know who's going tonight?
No.
Ellie Costello.
She's going.
And I've seen... She'll be on at 10 o'clock this morning, so...
I want to see what she wears.
I've seen the outfit. The outfit's been prepped, ready.
Are you allowed to say what it is, or is she like a bride before the wedding?
It's very pink and very sparkly.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, she's out. I can hear her laughing in the background now. It's quite something to behold, ladies and gentlemen. You better log onto her Instagram, and there she is. You better tell us about it later, Ellie. It's quite something special.
We'll show her off later. Yeah, absolutely. OK, well, it's the right weather for wearing nothing but a pink dress with cowboy boots. Isn't it? It's going to be warm, and I bet you if you're in a crowd of 90,000, it's going to be very warm. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just 1 or 2 pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England. But for most, it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of 1 or 2 showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well. Should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for the giveaway now, which is a super whopper of a prize. You can win more than 16,000 quid's worth of stuff.
Yes, that's £15,000 in tax-free cash and a whole host of summer treats. So that could be yours, but you've got to be in it to win it. So here's how.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. So you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, still to come. As the search for the missing teenager Jay Slaters enter its 6th day, police are expanding their search. We'll tell you more in a moment.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
History lecturers at the University of Liverpool have been advised to problematise whiteness and heterosexuality in their seminars. They are saying that you should be guilty if you're white and heterosexual. Not using the long words they use, but that's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, but do you know what? History in this country is concerned with more and has been lived by more white people and more heterosexuals, right? And that's the history. I'll tell you something else, Dawn. This is Russell Group University material here. This is Liverpool. It's a really good university. Mm-hmm. The thing that really got me going apart from this, and I thought it was an AI generation of words input into a system to come up with from something. It's ridiculous. The main issue I have is the verb problematise. I've never heard of that before. Yeah. So they should be prioritising grammar. Let's get first principles back in there firstly.
It's just promoting anti-racism.
It's not, Amy.
It is. Wait. It's just bringing the marginalised voices into the discussion. So
no, what they're saying is look at British history through the optic of
all perspectives. So let's look at it from the perspective of a queer person growing up. Let's look at it from the perspective of somebody from...
But that's not the majority.
When I actually looked at the evidence, it's all about unpacking bias. And you have to admit there has been a white bias in history.
No, there hasn't, because the facts...
From a white perspective...
Amy, the facts are, in history, most people in this country are white and heterosexual.
Of course, but then there's still...
So that's the history.
...voices that deserve to be brought into the discussion as much as the dominant...
Look,
like, that's all decolonising the curriculum is hearing all sides of the argument. Which surely we at GB News love. We celebrate that. That's what we do.
We do, but we're not telling anybody it's bad to be white or it's bad to be...
Exactly.
That is not what...
Amy, it is. It is.
The People's Channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Hello again, 24 minutes, just nearly 25 minutes past 9. Now, the search for the missing British teenager, Jay Slater, has entered its 6th day in Tenerife.
Well, police on the island say the search will now focus on a rural village and valley. That's after the 19-year-old went missing on what was actually his first holiday ever without his parents. Earlier, we spoke to the travel writer, Joe Corley.
Unfortunately, after I think it's 6 days now, there's still no finding, still no sighting of Jay. All the locals here, they're very kind of invested and they're trying to help as much as possible. There's bars that are offering free food. There's people that are offering to join the search. Car hire companies that are offering cars for people that want to go and help with the search. It has affected the local population quite a lot.
What do we know about this rural village now that the search is focused on?
Yeah, I mean, Masca is one of the prettiest villages in Tenerife, but it's very remote. It's only accessible via an extreme switchback road. It's kind of it clings to the side of the Tino Mountains, which is a vast area scarred by lots of ravines and cliffs. I think Masca itself is about 1,000 meters above sea level. Difficult to access. You need a car to get there. There are trails that do crisscross the area, but again, it's very barren. It's full of cacti, rocks, fallen rocks. It's difficult for even the most adept hikers, but for somebody like Jay, who's not used to the area, it's got to be a nightmare. Complete wilderness.
And of course, yeah, we think that we're looking now at pictures of the sort of people out actually looking through the undergrowth. We've seen helicopters and drones looking for Jay. But the problem is, I guess, if he did at any point succumb to the heat, he would have looked for shade, which would make him even more difficult to find.
That's exactly what he would have done, yeah. And there is a lot of shade in that area because of the tall cliffs. There are also natural caves, huge boulders. So the shade is everywhere. I mean, there's so many pockets to yet be searched.
Well, let's hope we get some good news from there today.
Fingers crossed. Right, don't go anywhere. We've got Aidan McGee with all your sport in just a moment.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Theatres and drama schools are being offered plus-size inclusivity training. Come on, seriously, is this really a thing? In order to tackle fat phobia, to apparently make the theatre more inclusive for bigger bodies, a lady called Ruth Ann Phillips, who is a plus-size theatre director, she's behind the drive. Now, apparently, her own research, so it's not exactly independent, showed that 9 out of 10 respondents should have training on size inclusion. Ruth is also the co-founder of Inclusion Collective, which is an organisation that provides training in creative well-being, body positivity and inclusive movement. Her website contains resources on fat activism, advocacy for the rights and dignity of fat people, combating discrimination and the body-conscious scale. This is actually about health. Ruth is conflating the two. Professor Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist, said normalising obesity has become fashionable in advertising and the media simply to sell stuff, but it's got nothing to do with celebrating diversity. Nobody needs to be fat. It's like encouraging risky behaviours such as smoking, driving after a booze up or lying like a lobster on the beach in the sun. A balanced diet and lots of exercise are the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle. He went on to say, how can anybody possibly justify these projects? Plus-size inclusivity training, please bring back common sense. Well, exactly. I'm for equal opportunity and for giving people credit based on merit and what they bring to the table, even if it is food. Only joking. That's where the way to my heart is through my gut. I'm looking for a man that can cook. But in truth, being obese can be dangerous. And whilst I absolutely agree you should love what God gave you, obesity is the biggest killer and costs the health service a fortune. People come in all shapes and sizes, and it's a wonderful thing. But to conflate body positivity with obesity is very dangerous.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you. This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Should we look at the sport this morning? Aidan McGee's here. Morning. And what should you do if you got a very bad performance in the Euros so far? I mean, look, you're still top of the table, but you've had a win and a draw, and everyone's saying you're really not playing as a team. Well, how do you handle that? What do you do on a day like this?
Go and have some yoga, a yoga session, I would say.
Do a downward dog.
If you can't show tactical flexibility, then at least show some physical flexibility. No, all joking aside.
But that's what they're doing.
It is. It is. Yes, it is. But it's part of it. They do it quite regularly. Yeah. You know, that's it. Ryan Giggs said that was the reason he played until he was 40 because of the extra flexibility in his limbs.
I'm sure it's very good for them.
And so England, as things stand, look, they got 4 points. They're not in a bad situation points-wise. It's just that the performances so far have been very lax, very lethargic. There hasn't been the tempo. Is it a problem with personnel? Is it a problem with tactics? Is it a problem with the manager? Are we seeing a Ferrari being driven by a VW driver? You know, that's what's been suggested.
Oh, ouch, that's hurtful.
I know. And so it just shows that what you've done in previous tournaments doesn't really matter. And because he's built a reputation over that period of time, I'm seeing very much echoes of 2006 here, the golden generation, David Beckham, Wayne Rooney, Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard,
but
Ashley
we didn't
Cole.
win the Euros then.
No, we didn't. That's what I mean. But they were overhyped. And I wonder if... See, Sam Allardyce told me that when he took over England as England manager, he said the problem is in between their ears. It's the pressure. There is no pressure like playing for England. There really isn't. And you can play for Man United, and that's huge pressure involved with playing for them or any other top six club. When you're carrying the expectation of a nation that hasn't won the World Cup or Euros since 1966, then it's a different ball game because people who aren't ordinarily into football would start watching it, and suddenly develop an opinion. They take an opinion from anywhere. Stephen's done it 3 times this morning, you know.
Well, no, this is it. I do. I don't watch league football, but watch when England's playing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
my parents would have been exactly the same. And so this is why the players that's why they have psychologists on site all the time to deal with that pressure of playing games to game. I personally don't believe that England will play that badly going through the tournament, but then I think back to 2006, I said that then. They got worse, you could argue. There was no synergy between the players. And one thing Gareth Southgate worked on with this group was eliminating the cliques. So you know, we think back to Beckham's time, you know, he had his own table with his Man United mates. You had Alan Shearer had his mates on one table.
That's not good, is it?
No, it's not. So he eliminated all that, and he was in a position back then on the periphery of the squad, Gareth Southgate, to view this scenario and think this isn't good going forward. And so he's eliminated that. So you wonder, I don't think it's a problem with togetherness. I think the squad are together. I think the players generally, when they speak to me, they say they enjoy playing for England much more than, say, their predecessors would have done because of the pressure. But for some reason, it's not clicking on the pitch right now. As I say, 4 points they've got in Group C. They should be enough to get through, and they should win their last game. But they need a performance. They really do.
That first game that they did win...
Yes.
I mean, did they play very much better in that?
Not really. I mean, Stephen and I touched on it last week. I mean, they played well for the first half an hour. They seem to withdraw. I think this is about conserving energy. Gareth Southgate has a genuine worry about fatigue among the players. So he thinks, like, get ahead. Let's get ahead. And our defence is good enough to be able to hold back and resist anything that comes our way. It's not that simple. Once you give an opponent the ball at any level, if they got the ball,
they go with it.
They get confident. They get confident. They get belief.
What they did.
That's exactly what Denmark did.
But this is what I worry about Gareth Southgate, in that he said after the first match, he said, yeah, we won, but we didn't play very well.
Yeah.
We must play better in the next game.
And they go and play, and
they played worse.
Yes, exactly. So, look, Kyle Walker did make a decent excuse, well, not an excuse. Some people viewed it as an excuse. I didn't. He said, look, it's not as simple as just turning up and swatting away these players. Denmark got to the Euro semi-final against England, actually, in 2021. Most of those players are still around. You're playing against players who, they're playing for their country. It matters. They're Premier League players. And so it kind of blows the argument out the window, doesn't it, about how all the England players playing in the Premier League and therefore they're playing upwards of 50, 60 games, because you've got Premier League players playing in every squad in this tournament, pretty much. So it's the same for everybody. And if they're not playing in England, they're playing in Germany and they're playing in Spain. Well, they also, guess what, play football matches. So that excuse doesn't wash. But I genuinely think he's been looking at his stats, obviously. He's been looking at all the technology behind all this. He'll have seen the numbers. Players enter the red zone. And so if they enter the red zone, it means they're at risk of injury. There's tiredness involved. I think there's a genuine belief in the group stage, why not conserve energy? Go, take the lead and hang back. At the moment, though, it's not working. Although he might privately, he might be saying to his backroom staff, we got 4 points.
Yeah, that's right. Or you're only as good as the next.
Is it part of a master plan?
Next game,
we'll see. They need to improve to get the nation back on side.
I was just going to say, what I thought was interesting was obviously William was there, Prince William was there with the King of Denmark, and they posted a picture beforehand, and all very nice and pally, and said, "May the best team win."
Yes.
And in fact, the best team didn't win.
No, I agree.
Because that would have been Denmark.
Yes, exactly. But listen, it's gone now. They got a point out of it. Some would say they were quite fortunate. I think they'll get through. If they can conserve energy going forward, maybe the plan might come good, but they need to improve.
It was all in William's face, the pictures in the papers the next morning. I mean, he looked so disappointed. Yes. Andy Murray, very briefly, what are the stats on him being fit enough to play at Wimbledon?
Well, it's looking unlikely, I would say. I mean, 9 days he has left. July the 1st is when Wimbledon is underway. He would like to say goodbye because he had his most famous days there. But he's having surgery today.
His back?
On his back. He had a scan 2 days ago. He made the decision yesterday to go under the knife. Stephen said earlier on, he said, I'm not sure if it would be that invasive. We don't know. I mean, you would think...
Not if you were thinking of turning it round in 9 days.
Well, maybe privately he doesn't think he can do it, but he wants to just maybe keep up.
But he could still play in the Olympics.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, the Olympics would be great as well because he won a gold medal at the London Games.
But that's at Roland Garros, isn't it? Which isn't...
It's not the same.
It's clay court, which isn't his strength.
Clay court's where he got his injuries earlier in the season. It's such a hard and unforgiving surface. But look, he keeps going. But he's got 4 kids. He's got a lot of money. He's got knighthood.
But I think what matters to him is the next match.
What it tells me, Stephen, is that maybe he hasn't got enough lined up, and that's why normally sports people who hang on to their career is because they don't really see something coming up on the horizon.
But he's not going to be a commentator, is he? I mean,
no, he's not a natural commentator, is he?
I think so. You know what I liked about him? I've known him, I've interviewed him since he was probably 16, 17. He never changed. He never bumped into a PR guy who said, come on, be a happy-go-lucky joke cracker.
Yeah, he's not going to do Strictly Come Dancing,
No,
is he?
He stayed the same. And he always felt he was who he said he was.
Yeah.
And eventually, it yielded success for him. It took a while, but he did get over the line in the Grand Slams and obviously with the Olympics as well.
Oh, someone's just said in my ear, you could have your job.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, certainly not.
No.
You need me.
We do.
Honestly, I don't think he couldn't talk it, could he?
He wouldn't fancy the 3 o'clock start.
He's not a talker.
No, he wouldn't, no.
He's not a grand talker.
Anyway, you'd kick off anyway if you had to go with him.
Yeah. Right, look, it's been a pleasure, Aidan, as always.
Yes.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Still to come for you after some very generous donations from you. The Shot at Dawn Memorial has reopened at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. We'll tell you more in a minute.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands?
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well. So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
And we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
(9:42). Good morning to you. Now, a few months ago, we reported on the fundraising campaign for the Shot at Dawn Memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire.
2 months on now, and thanks to many donations from you, the GB News viewers, it's now been reopened to the public.
Well, our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson went to see for himself.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. Back in April, the National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years. With work taking place over the past few months, yesterday marked the official reopening with a service at the site attended by members of the public. Philippa Rawlinson is director of the National Memorial Arboretum.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people. Over 900 individuals have donated. We've been able to not only replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War, but also look at drainage and landscaping and access and interpretation for the site. So we've been able to do a full-scale restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. It was designed and sculpted by Andy de Comin. He describes the restoration.
So the sculpture itself, I mean, you can see it's looking a lot brighter than the last time you saw it. So first of all, a really good clean, and then this coating is it's a mixture of lime and polymers. Also, there's a waterproof coating over the top of that. So, first of all, it brightens it up, but then also it's going to keep it looking nice for a long time. Keep the rain out, and this will be like a periodic thing that we'll do from time to time.
In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at Dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, you know, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him and remember him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The restoration of this memorial is now complete and its future secured so that the sacrifice of these men will never be forgotten. Jack Carson, GB News, Staffordshire.
Quite right too.
And I think what's also should never be forgotten is not so much their sacrifice, but the inhumane way we used to treat people.
Yeah, absolutely terrible.
Young lads who are taken away from their families to fight for their country, and then for some reason were,
a bit reluctant or shell-shocked.
Cowardice, or shell-shocked often, or just plain terrified. And,
Thankfully, things have changed on that front.
Yeah.
The protest group All Under One Banner, you may not have hold of them, but they're holding a Scottish Independence March in Bannockburn today.
The march is due to start at the Old Stirling Bridge at 11 this morning.
Well, our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire, is in Bannockburn for us now. Good to see you. How many people are going to be turning up for this, Tony?
Straight in there with the hard questions. It hasn't even started yet. We're still about 90 minutes away from seeing that. But typically for All Under One Banner marches, we usually do see upwards of 4,000 to 7,000. And it would be fair to say that if the weather remains as glorious as it is today, then we're going to see, quite a decent turnout. However, this is in the centre of Scotland, whereas Glasgow, of course, and the city seems to get quite a bit more foot traffic. But nevertheless, independence has been something kind of missing from this campaign for the election. And yet, in the last week, we've really seen it explode into the news cycle. First, John Swinney unveiling the SNP election manifesto, which of course had page 1, line 1, to vote SNP for Scotland to become an independent country. Someone who might have something to say about that, though, is Keir Starmer. He was up in Scotland yesterday and he flat out said that the SNP are saying that they want to go to Westminster to send a message, and that is the extent of their ambition. But it's never going to be a priority, and the SNP have got the wrong priorities, sounding very much like he would turn down John Swinney if the SNP leader comes to him for a Section 30 in order to have a new referendum. Someone else on the campaign trail yesterday, though, was Kate Forbes, the Deputy First Minister of Scotland. And I asked her, after the last few years, there have been several fractures from within the pro-independence movement, the Yes movement, and what would she do after John Swinney came in and after 2 weeks said that he had healed the rifts in the SNP? Could he do the same for the Yes movement? Here's what she said.
I joined John Swinney's government because I was inspired by his vision to heal rifts, to reach out and to unite not just the party or the movement, but indeed the country at a time of polarising, toxic discourse. We were then plunged within a matter of weeks into an election. And so I accept that an election is not the ideal time to try and work together and to create that sense of unity. But in the Scottish Parliament and outside, the SNP is a minority government. We will only be able to work together and deliver change if we reach out across the Yes movement and then across the constitutional divide itself. But my hope is that after the 4th of July, with a strong group of SNP MPs in Westminster, we can restart that work to reach out across the movement and across the country.
Now, Bannockburn and Stirling Bridge, the start and end of this march today, two key locations in the Scottish Wars for Independence fought by William Wallace, and behind me is Robert the Bruce. And interestingly, as there's a new battle getting fought on the campaign trail, SNP, well, yeah, they are down in the polls from 2019, but support for independence remains steady, which means that there's likely to be quite a lot of jubilant voices up here in Stirlingshire today.
Okay.
Thank
Jolene,
you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you told us who that was, because I was wondering. It's a particularly brilliant statue, isn't it?
It is fantastic.
Great.
Of course, we know one of his ancestors, Alistair Bruce.
Of course,
Major
yes.
General.
Yeah.
Alistair Bruce
Governor
is,
of Edinburgh
we know.
Castle.
He is indeed. He's one of the
And
ancestors.
knows everything about everything.
He does, yeah, very clever man. Right, look, Saturday Morning Live coming up at 10 o'clock for you this morning. Ellie and Ben are here, standing by. Morning, you two.
Good morning.
Welcome to Westminster.
How are you liking the studio?
Well,
Intimate,
it's different.
isn't it?
It's intimate,
It's
yes.
cosy, isn't it?
It is cosy, yes.
We're all very close.
What have you got for us today?
All the fallout, of course, from Sir Keir Starmer's interview with Chopper last night, Nigel Farage as well. However, in more positive news, our greatest Britain this week, an incredible young woman, 24-year-old ultra-endurance athlete, Imo Body. She scaled the Three Peaks Challenge. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So Mount Snowdon, Scafell Pike and Nevis, of course. She did it in 6 days, 5 hours. But she ran in between each mountain. So she's a great athlete, really inspirational young woman.
And she's very good, because you said you did this and you almost died.
I did.
And you like
You're
going
spilling
to
the
gym and
beans now.
things. Well, yes.
Oh, we tried to scale Scafell Pike, me and my friend, and we ended up being
He said it was very
evacuating.
difficult.
What, you didn't get mountain rescue out?
Not on the perimeter. We encountered a storm. We were camping. Our tent blew away. Maybe we were just being amateurs, but
So Imo's very good, is what we're saying.
Lots of admiration for
Well,
us.
I've done Scafell Pike many times.
Have you?
Well, yeah, because it's my neck of the woods where I grew up. But Scafell Pike is one of those ones where you do have to be really careful. It is a dangerous mountain.
We did it in November, and the ground was completely
Well, that
boggy.
was silly.
So, how silly are you?
I know, very stupid. We were young.
He's very silly.
Still am young, but anyway.
And we're also going to be talking to JB Gill, who you may know from the boy band JLS. He is now a farmer. And he's going to be talking to us about the changing food trolley, because it is changing. Young people, apparently, are willing to pay more for food that is sustainable and good for the earth and good for the environment.
Organic stuff.
Exactly.
See, I always refuse to buy organic.
And all of that. Why?
Yeah, well, not because I think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's probably a very good idea. It's just not like paying the premium.
Oh, I see. Well, it might be something to do with their age. Whereas if you're older, if you're an older Briton, apparently you want to buy British and support local. That's where the priority lies when you're... So would you like to buy British?
Yes.
Well, there you go.
What are you
proven
trying to say,
exactly.
Costello?
This is what JLS boy band member JB Gill is saying. And he's going to be talking to us
We live
later
quite
on.
near Jeremy Clarkson's farm.
Do you?
And me and one of my sons particularly, we want to go on a day out to go to his farm shop.
I'll come with you. I really want to go.
Yeah.
Have you been before?
No.
He's got a great milk vending machine, so you can get fresh, pure milk, Stephen.
Is that called a cow?
Behave
a milk
yourself.
vending machine.
Apparently, so some animal called a cow.
Yeah.
Anyway, you pop a quid in and milk comes out, and it's just a...
And it's all the fresh stuff that you like. The what's it called? That milk that has
unpasteurised.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Raw milk.
Raw milk. That's the one.
Raw milk. Oh, how interesting.
Controversial.
Yeah.
Well, there you are. You see, it's the idea of a day out is very different nowadays, isn't it?
Well, yes, but I'll come with you.
Forget all of that.
There's only one story in town.
There's only one story in town, and that's you off to see
No, I'm so
Taylor
excited.
Swift
I can
tonight.
barely contain myself. I'm actually you're very lucky I'm here. There's people already heading there. On the tube this morning, there were girls in glitter heading to Wembley.
Shouldn't you be already on your way?
I wish I was, Anne, but I have work. I have work to do. I have a shift to do.
I thought that was you then.
Yeah, that's me.
You've got your outfit that
So
you need
what
to
are
get
you
on.
going to wear?
Well, so Stephen has seen
Special.
outfit one, which is sequins and velour, pink velour. But I have actually ordered, this is an exclusive now, a tiered pink mini dress with embellished
Was that
straps.
the vivid pink one? I
Yeah,
see a
the
vivid
fuchsia.
pink one. I saw
Fuchsia.
that one.
No. I've got a standby now, so potentially I could have an outfit change. Who knows? Who knows what the night will take us?
She changes outfits about 20 times
Well, exactly,
at least,
But you can't do it in the crowd.
Well,
I know, I need to work that out.
with you.
But I've got a cowgirl hat, cowgirl boots, and it's going to be great.
Sunglasses. You should have bought the hat on
and
air.
sunglasses, yeah.
Should have bought the hat on air today.
I should have done.
Are you two Swifties?
No.
I don't get it.
As Ellie keeps saying, I'm too old.
I'd go and see Ellie perform, but I wouldn't know Taylor Swift if I fell over her.
We're very similar people.
Yeah, you take lots of pictures.
I will, yes. I'll post lots of pictures, I promise.
Excellent.
All right, you have a lovely time
Thank
tonight.
you.
And have a good show in the meantime.
Yeah, well, there is a programme to do first.
Yes,
Got some
right,
work to
you
do
two.
first.
See you in a minute.
See you in a bit.
That's it from us. Here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just one or two pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England, but for most it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm,